All right, welcome to the Sae Bae cast number 203 with Darts. Darts, how we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me on the cast. I'm super excited to be here. It's really an honor.
I will
I love what you're doing with the podcast, by the way. Having a variety of players. I'm glad to be one of them.
No, that well, thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to get just more voices on the cast, more perspectives heard. I think that's one thing that's kind of been lacking just according to my vocal audience. I mean, I have a pretty large audience of people that don't ever share any feedback, but then the people that do share the feedback make it very clear that they don't want the duplicate guests. Some people do like, just having like the more casual conversations, but there are some people that are like, we really want to hear some gamers' perspectives. So I think you're the perfect guest for that. As far as I'm aware, you're pretty damn high level. I'm pretty sure you had one of the quote unquote snowflake account builds. I don't know if that changed over the years, but
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
let's just dive into it, I guess. So just a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your OSRS journey.
yeah, sure. So, hey, everybody. My name's Darts. I'm an old school RuneScape player who's been around the community for some time now. Originally, I was known for doing Untrimmed Slayer on my peer, like early on in like 2017. But these days, I think I'm probably better known for like doing skilling records and competitions. I'm a proud member of Solace as well, by the way, which is the number one skilling clan in old school. I also play 20 RS3 alts on the side for GP, and I have a near maxed hardcore Iron Man, which I'm hoping to finish maxing relatively soon.
Wow. Okay, wait. 20 alts. Can you just, for those that aren't aware of how much effort that is or lack of effort it is, I'm not sure much on
It,
RS3. Can you explain that?
yeah, so RS3 alts are just insanely low effort. Like, there's really nothing in old school that actually like truly compares to an RS3 alt, in my opinion. They're just not only are they super AFK, like they can be up to 15 minutes of AFK time, but you can also reset them fully with the keyboard. So I can easily play on these 20 alts while I'm doing like just about any activity in the game, including stuff like three tick granite or things like that. I can just basically always be printing GP on the side.
That's crazy. So is it actually just like one key? Like, do you? I don't know if there's like a logout timer. Is that the same thing with OSR's like 25-minute logout or something, or do you
Yeah,
need to?
unfortunately, RS3 has a slightly shorter logout timer. It's about
Hmm.
15 minutes, which is why that's like the cap. But there's a couple different ways you can play them. Like you could, try to wait until you get like close to being lobbied and just have something called a potion reservoir, which automatically drinks your potions for you. So you can basically always be drinking these things called aggro overloads, which are overloads plus aggro potions in one, which will basically just keep you in combat. Basically, just always printing money. You have your legendary pet, which will pick up drops for you. You have the spring cleaner, which will automatically alchable items and just put the GP straight up into your coin pouch. So it gets really, really insane even when you scale the alts up to like a high number.
Now, did you build all these alts, or were they like given to you, or I don't know how? I feel like I've heard of people that use RS3 alts, and sometimes they'll just use an account of their friends or something. Be like, okay, I'm not
Yeah,
using these right now, so you can use them.
yeah, that definitely happens. But no, I build all my alts myself, and it's taken me quite some time.
How
Um,
long
I
does it take per one? And do you do them all at the same time, or just one at a time?
Yeah, so I mean, I started out just going for Spiritual Warriors, which is kind of the most common RS3 alt. They don't make a ton of money, but they're just pretty fast to make at roughly 150 hours or so, and they're not super, super expensive as well. But you can kind of play on multiple accounts, and I like to say that, that kind of cuts the amount of time to make. Like, let's say you play on three accounts at once, that 150 hours to me turns to 50 hours per account to finish.
Hmm.
Um, so a lot of this stuff's like pretty AFK. It's pretty easy, but I've been working on upgrading from spiritual warriors to abyssal beasts, which make a considerably larger amount of money, but are a much much larger time investment and GP investment as well. I don't really have like a good estimate on them. I just know it's been taking me absolutely forever to finish these 20 beast alts.
So how much money is made an hour if you're like doing everything efficiently, having all 20 run every hour? Like
So
OSRS money, I guess,
yeah,
like the
yeah, yeah,
conversion.
yeah. So spiritual warriors make like somewhere around 400K, maybe up to like 500K old school an hour, which doesn't really sound like a lot. But abyssal beasts make a considerably larger amount. Like I would say with the current swap rates, because swap rates have been uh, getting a lot better for RS3 to old school, I'd be making up to like just under 1.2 mil per hour per account. So we're looking at like pretty easily 20 mil GP per hour once I finish all 20 of these beasts in old school.
Nice. That is pretty solid. And I feel like just over time, you just get used to it. Have you always been an alter? Do you just like that sort of altscape meta?
Yeah, I would say so. I got started on alts like really early in old school. Um, like my very first ever goal when I first started playing was just to do Untrimmed Slayer, and I kind of needed a way to fund that. So I opted. My very first alt was actually Motherlode Mine alt, which isn't the best, isn't the worst. I think it's a pretty decent first alt, to be fair. Eventually, I got into like crafting Double Natures, which are pretty good for a while, and yeah, it was just a way just to fund my skilling goals for a while, and I'm really glad that I got started when I did because like alts are just so crucial for like uh, most things in this game at this point, I would say.
Now, let's kind of talk about your history with old school. When did you start old school? I guess when did you start RuneScape? And then did you start old school on release? And I kind of want to hear like the, I guess, evolution of your play style.
Yeah, so the first time I ever played RuneScape was in 2004. So I did end up picking up my 20-year tape in RS3, which I was super happy to get. But I didn't really play old school until 2016. I wish I'd been playing from release, but I don't know what I was doing at the time. I was probably playing like League of Legends or something. Um, but yeah, 2016 was when I first started playing, and I didn't really get involved in playing a lot until probably the next year because like when I first started, I didn't really have a lot of goals. I didn't even think I would like max at any point, to be honest. I didn't think I had that kind of like that grinder gene in me at the time.
Yeah. But yeah, that's, I mean, it sounds like me kind of starting in 2015. I just remember like the first 3 days of playing I was doing solar sales in Las Vegas, and I had a roommate that like reminded me of RuneScape, and he's like, "Oh yeah, they have the old school version." And yeah, those first 3 days were like, "There's no way I could even get into this game right now. This is just awful." And then something clicked, and I was like, "Okay, I'm kind of addicted." And then that addiction slowly snowballed into just, okay, I'm taking this super seriously, and I'm super addicted, and everything's super fun, and I'm logged in for hours a day, every day.
Yeah, for sure. Like I didn't go into it with a background of playing other MMOs or anything like that very
Hmm.
much. Like I did play some other games like Maple Story and things like that, but I didn't really take them very seriously in terms of like leveling up and going for goals and things like that. But when I started old school, I set some goals at the time I thought were pretty big, like going for 99 Slayer at the start, and things just kind of snowballed from there. Like I think I started doing agility because I wanted some shortcuts to help me get to like my tasks faster. And I think it was the first time I knew that I really started to love this was when I think I 6 hour logged during like on the rooftops one time. I was like, so that was 6 hours. Like it just completely flew by. And it just blew my mind, and I kind of realized it's like wow, like I can actually do this. And yeah, from there it just went on to max, and then after I max, I started setting post max goals and things like that, and yeah, it's just, I've just kind of been going ever since.
So let's talk about your passions for the game now. So it sounds like you slowly kind of realized you actually could be a pretty dedicated skiller. Um, and according to just a few of the notes we have just between ourselves and the Discord call, it also sounds like you're wanting to delve a bit more into PVM and stuff. I don't know your total experience with PVMing, but it sounds like you're definitely a giga skiller. I think I've even seen I mean, I have your account loaded. Your main account is just darts. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
And then how many other old school accounts do you have?
Uh, I mean, I've got a bunch of alts that I use just
Okay,
to
just
help with PVM and stuff. I do have one main alt that's got max cape on it. The RSN is Helm.
just
Um,
HELM.
yeah,
That is clean.
thank you. I've had that one for a while as well.
Nice. And then your hardcore. Can I look that one up?
Yeah, sure. The name is Desuvi, Desuvi. And yeah, that's kind of been one of my more recent focuses. Just because I'm a little bit nervous to kind of play a hardcore on the side, especially if I'm doing like Slayer and stuff. So I'm kind of shifting, uh, my focus fully towards that account at some point.
Hmm.
Um, so as of right now, I do have a couple 200 mils that are I'm quite close to finishing. Like I'm like 191 mil agility. I'm pretty close to finishing 200 mil mining as well. So I do kind of just want to knock those ones out on my pure. But after that, I do have a lot of PVM goals that I want to start working towards. It's like mainly for my hardcore, especially the combat achievements. That's something that really excites me, and I don't necessarily know how far I'm gonna get with them. I'm fully expecting to die at some point, but I think I'd rather die, trying to to go for the glory, than just to never try at all.
Yeah, that's fair. So I imagine I'm not fully sure because I've never played like restricted accounts, but you don't have Sepulcher, correct?
On my pure, I don't have Sep.
So that's
Actually,
all
I
in
can't
rooftops.
even. Yeah, it's all arty basically. I've got like 138,000 laps, and a lot of them aren't even tracked because I did them before the
Oh
trackers
yeah, yeah.
started.
How many
So
marks of grace do you spend them at all, or do you have you just
I
been
think I've
stacking?
spent them to me. I probably have a big stack in the bank. I don't really pay a lot of
Mm.
attention to the marks of grace, but I mean they do add up. It's pretty nice.
So are you? This is such. I have several questions because one is how you manage to stay a pure when everything else is max. You have one prayer and one defense, 50
Yeah.
attack, and knowing that a max cape is like in your clutch basically if you wanted to being able to enjoy all those perks. How have you like resisted that, or have you just been like super like I'm never changing this account, this is going to be it till the end of time?
Well, there's been a lot of peers who have broke build, like for the same reasons that you mentioned. I've always told people though that it's never going to happen for me, at least at least not intentionally. So I think one of the main things that keeps me away from wanting to get max cape on it is because I've already done it. Like I do have my alt that has max cape, so if there's any sort of content that I want to do, I can always just hop on that account and do it. So I really have pretty much zero motivation to ever go main at this point. It does feel kind of limiting sometimes not having access to all of Mauritania.
Yeah.
Um, it means that I can't do Tob. I can't do like the grotesque guardians. I can't even get assigned a whole bunch of Slayer tasks. Like pretty much all the ones that are in the Slayer Tower, I can't even get those assigned. So if I
Mm.
want to do Sire, for example, I have to actually get that specific boss task and do like 30 of them at a time or whatever. So it makes going for that pet way, way harder.
You have almost 200 mil agility, and were you concerned at all this past year of them changing the rates? I imagine you did so much of already where it was 62.5k max, and now I think it's 70k max.
Yeah,
What were
I
your thoughts
was
on that? Let's hear it.
so I was quite against that change. And I know it sounds selfish just because I've already done a ton of arty or whatever, but my main reason for why I was against that change to begin with was just because like just take a look at the roofs. Like at any time, it's been popular for so long. Even though we've had SEP and that's been the meta for so long, like it hasn't stopped people from jumping on the arty roofs at any point. So I just felt like the buff wasn't necessary, and to me it was just kind of a way just to make the skill a little bit easier when I kind of like having the skills not necessarily be balanced. Like to me, I think it's okay, if we have cooking that's like a mil XP per hour, whereas agility is only 100k. I don't think everything necessarily needs to be the exact same, in the same way that not all bosses are of equal difficulty, you know?
Yep, I'm totally with you there. I think and I'm also a big proponent of not just buffing XP rates for no reason. It sounded like, the J mods were kind of stuck, in a kind of sticky situation where they're trying to rebalance the rooftops and trying to mitigate some of the problems with the diaries, for example. Like the fact that like Sears course with the diary was just somewhere you stay basically until 80 or even until 90 if you just never wanted to go to Relica, and then adjusting Paldiv niche to be a little bit more viable. I feel like the way they space it out makes so much sense now, and it all feels reasonable. It feels like when you get to the next course, it's actually a buff. It's not like something that feels the exact same and you have to do it for another 10 levels. But True. I definitely am not one of those people that just wants to see XP rates increase for no particular reason. I think the balancing, though, the way they went about it, and they weren't even, I believe, trying to get Artie to be 70K. I think they said it was going to be like 65K, and people freaked out.
Yeah,
like
yeah. Well, I think they went back on what they said, right? I think they heard a lot of complaints on Reddit, and I mean, I think lately when it comes to Reddit, I think they've had quite some influence over the game, in my opinion. Like, I know back in the day, the JMods used to consult high-level players like quite some time ago in regards to like new skilling content. But now it does seem like the vocal majority wins.
I will say I think this really wasn't as big of an issue. It's a big issue when you're playing like a restricted account like yourself, where it really is just a complete devaluation of everything you've done. However, I kind of see it with a unrestricted sort of view where we already have Sepulcher. It already devalued agility in a way where like rates are now massively increased. I mean, it used to be 62K basically. If you wanted to really sweat, I think you could get like maybe 70K from Brimhaven, spamming stuff and getting tickets. But then there was a jump to 105K. I mean, seriously, if you wanted to really sweat it out, you're getting 105K. But it was definitely justified. I think it was a justified change to allow agility to have this significant jump because of the difficulty, because of the learning curve, because of just how much more you have to focus. You can't be just running alts and doing Sepulcher unless you're like a super giga gamer. But
oh, for sure, yeah.
So them changing now middle ground methods, because Artie is no longer the top echelon, it's now the middle ground. I feel like it made a lot more sense to be able to have a marginal increase up to 70K max and keep Sepulcher where it's at.
Maybe I personally I don't fully agree. I think that they could have changed, like rebalanced just the lower level courses and balanced them kind of around Artie. I don't really think it needed to go up. It wasn't even a massive change, to be fair, but I mean, the way I do look at it is kind of a 300-hour loss for me. Yeah, but like, it is. I also, I mean, I don't expect them to be balancing the game around limited accounts such as myself either. I definitely don't think that's fair. But with Sep increasing the rate, I do think that one common misconception among a lot of high-level skillers is that we just don't want the game to get faster, which is true to a point. I think a lot, like the vast majority of players that I've spoken to about Sep, and I've also done it a little bit myself, like on my hardcore, the common belief is that it is excellent content. Like, people absolutely love Sep, despite it, making agility faster. I think people think that the trade-off is worth it, and just the amount of skill expression that you get to display during the method makes it worth making the skill faster. So that I actually give the JMods huge props for what they've done with Sep. I know it did take probably too long for us to get instances, but hey, they did it eventually, so I gotta give them props for that.
Yeah, I think the instances were a good move. I think originally it was something where, I don't know, there's always a part of me that, like, with courses, you want this, like, stability and this anticipatory sort of gaming where you can just fully anticipate what's about to happen. You can get that pattern recognition really in. Because without instances, truly Sepulcher was more difficult. It would slow you down. It would, you'd have to turn your brain on a little bit, which is obnoxious. So I think the overall pros 100% outweighed the potential cons with some of the added difficulty of having a player ruin your run, in a way. Because that would be a sign of skill expression, is to have some idiot run in your world.
I think people just didn't like things out of their control in regards to players, and I don't think that it necessarily made it more skillful having to deal with them. I feel like they just kind of ragged the max rates, which is unfortunate. Like, people were having to use PvP worlds and things like that at the time, which isn't a great solution. So
no, I think what they did is great. And this was kind of one of the talking points I used to cover a lot years back when Sepulcher was first released, because it was originally proposed that Sepulcher without looting was going to be about 80k XP an hour.
Right.
And that is just, it's you're throwing out a number. If you say 100k, people would freak out, and no average player is getting 100k or maintaining that, even if they're not looting. An average player, I'm saying, not a skiller. True. So they had to throw out a number, and I think we could probably both agree. I'll get your thoughts on this, but what they have done, it makes the most sense, because there is an element of looting if you care to. And if you were getting less than Artie, for example, like if you were getting 50k XP, like let's just say 80k was the max, and now you're looting and you're only getting 50k XP an hour, but you're still sweating and you're looting, it's like that wouldn't feel good. So they had to somehow balance it, and I think the rates are basically as perfect as they could get, because again, fully looting, like on my Iron Man, like on Sae Bae, I did maybe 20 mil or so Sepulcher, and I would loot floor 3, 4, and 5, and I'd maybe average 80k, maybe a little less if I was just unfocused or streaming or something. But knowing I could still achieve pretty damn decent rates and still get loot, I think was I don't know, it felt good to at least be still getting over Artie significantly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty balanced, like you said, even with looting or without looting. But I do think that it probably could have been mentioned during the poll, like the absolute max rates. Mm-hmm. But I just think that they honestly didn't know that it was possible for players to be that good. And I think that this is a trend that we've seen with most skilling methods that have been polled. I can't remember the exact numbers for DriftNet, which is now the current meta, but those were also way lower than what people have been able to get today. Mm-hmm. Maybe some of that's due to the plugins we have and things like that, but I think it kind of comes down to probably just hopefully better QA testing on their side. I don't know how skilled the JMods are, but I wish that maybe they could just get some of these very micro efficient skillers on to test content. Like Enjoys, for example. I think he could do a great job at testing things like mm-hmm. hopefully sailing in the future isn't going to have these sort of issues. But
I mean, we also have to keep in mind, I mean, if you were to throw somebody into play testing, let's just say Sepulcher was exactly what it is right now with all the rates, because I think some things were tweaked. If you shove somebody in there, even for a week, trying to learn Sepulcher with no other sort of crowdsourcing of how to maneuver properly, and you're probably playing on Jagex's client, which has no RuneLight features, and you're dealing with some shit, it would be so hard to really understand how good you can really get at Sepulcher. I mean, even because I'd imagine you only really have a couple days to go in and play test, and there's just no way you would be able to get the actual rates of what it would be. Do you remember day one, or just week one of Sepulcher? I remember watching Ari Slash on stream. He was mauling over floor 4. I mean, he just couldn't get it done. It was just, he's just stuck there. I mean, so if you're in a play test and you can't even get to floor 5 because you're just struggling, it's just going to be very hard to.
That's actually a great point that you mentioned. I have heard from a lot of people that are really, really good at Sep that it took in some cases up to 50 mil XP to actually master it.
Yeah.
So maybe that is unreasonable for me to expect people to know what the absolute max rates are, but I don't know. Maybe it's just, I guess it's just wishful thinking, but I do think that 80K was probably a lower estimate
It was
on their side.
I think
Yeah.
there is a little bit of like I don't know. It's not like it's really miscommunication. I think it's just on their end, they understand what could maybe outrage the community. So without really having the community have a full sense of what's happening. I mean, we see it with sailing right now, where they come out with blog posts with sailing. The devs that are working on it know their vision. Like they see a vision of it, and we are seeing the scraps that they're trying to compile together to show us something. And we're like, what the fuck is this? Like this doesn't look too good. But ultimately, we cannot have a true picture of what they're, trying to get at. And I think Sepulcher was one of those complicated issues where it's just, and even Husky, I've had him on like a couple times talking about Sepulcher in particular, and he's just like, it was just hard to know the disparity between the average player trying to learn Sepulcher and trying to keep them engaged enough to learn it. Because if 80K really was max, when you're learning Sepulcher, you'd probably be getting like 40K, and how good is that going to feel?
Yeah.
To
True.
keep at it. But yeah, it's definitely a tough one. But I think Sepulcher makes a lot of sense. I want to kind of talk about the earlier methods that seem to be massive increases back in the day, skilling wise. So Granite is one of those. I definitely remember Automology's video of him initially showing off 3-tick 4G. That's such a classic video of him,
Yeah.
showing that and just seeing like, oh, I don't even know if this is sustainable long term. This is so intense. And then you have like 2-tick Swordfish. I think that was, oh crap, I'm spacing his name now. Who's the guy that came out with all the 2-tick methods? He's the guy that was also good at 6Jads. Can't remember his
Oh, I'm
name
not
right now.
sure about that player. I thought Ned Flanders was the one who.
Oh, he may have been. I just remember Ned Flanders as like the ZMI guy. Like he was the one that was like really. I mean, he was a giga skiller in a lot of other areas, but he's the name that reminds me of. Crap. I'm just spacing the name right now, which is just embarrassing because I've talked about him several times. But yeah, what did you think? It's besides the point. What do you think about those methods that were just massive increases? You see Acid Soul pulling maybe 60K mining XP an hour, and then it jumps to one, with the Infernal Pickaxe. Once we learned how the double rolls worked, 132K is pretty insane.
Right. I mean, yeah. On one hand, I do think it's kind of sad that no one's ever going to train mining the way that Acid Soul did to 200 mil. But at the same time, I honestly love 3-tick Granite. I think it's pretty balanced. I'm also very thankful that we haven't actually had anything that's faster than 3-tick Granite up to this point. I know we've had a couple of small buffs like the Celestial Ring. That's not really a huge deal, but yeah, I love the tick manipulation stuff. Like that's kind of what made me fall in love with skilling. I think if I was forced to have to just AFK stuff, I think I would just be bored out of my mind, honestly, and I'd probably be focusing on other things on the side to keep me entertained. So overall, I think it is great for the game, and we've seen like for example, RS3 doesn't really have a lot of tick manipulation methods, and while skilling can kind of still be made to be relatively engaging, it just doesn't really feel the same to to not have that option to really sweat it out if you do want to get those max rates. And I do think it really helps increase the skill cap and like skill expression and things like that. If you really want to min max it, it does take a lot of skill, in my opinion, to have a method that be that high APM and still be able to maintain close to tick perfect rates for long periods of time. But I do remember back in the day, like when those methods were first introduced, like I remember fishing even before we had swamp tar, or Kebbit claws is a known way to 3-tick. People used to do like snow fishing, and they had all these like creative methods that they used to use. I think that was my first ever time tick manipulating, was actually doing 3-tick snow fishing at Barb on using actually Trickwool snow out of all people. So that was a really good memory back in the day.
This is something that I've had in my head. I think you're a great guest to like talk about this with. So there seems to, this is, in my opinion, archaic. The idea that the highest skill or like the highest XP per hour you can get in a skill shouldn't be rewarding GP wise. That seems to be a little not always the case. It seemed to be kind of the case where power fishing, power mining, power woodcutting was kind of just, okay, this is the max XP rates, and you should be either not gaining any money or even potentially losing money on the side to get those XP rates. And that's how we're kind of seeing it as being balanced. But now we've seen things like, for example, black chins. Now there is an element of risk to it, but you're not having to like discard your black chins in order to get maximum XP rates. You're actually profiting majorly and getting maximum hunter XP rates, which in my opinion is a much more beautiful system because one, it's balanced in just the amount of effort you need. I mean, if you really want to sweat it out, I've seen like DK Ho's videos of him, ulting and stuff, and it's fucking insane.
Yeah.
And that's a really beautiful method because you are gaining profit and you are getting maximum XP rates. And then we see Sepulcher, for example. You're getting that Ring of Endurance. Even if you're sweating the whole thing, most people loot the chest unless you're going for like a 6 hour. And that element of getting GP and sweating feels really good to me. And I think the gem mine is one of like the best mining updates that we've seen in a while because you get this nice flow that feels like 3-tick 4G in a way with some camera movement. You're not having to drop many. Maybe you drop a few opals or something every lap, but ultimately you're actually profiting. You have a good pet chance and you're getting very, very reasonable mining XP rates. And I think one of the things that's kind of sad about some of these higher skill methods is and the 3-tick 4G's in there. I would say any sort of like barbarian fishing, if you're really trying to like 3-tick cut eat, you're not profiting, which, you could say that doesn't need to necessarily be a method that needs to be improved. But same thing with, 1.5 tick teaks. You're not profiting anything. Imagine you did though. I kind of want to hear your thoughts on the potential of actually moving away from the sort of quote unquote archaic system of losing money or not gaining any profit doing these skills and actually embracing it for the future.
Right. Yeah, so as of right now, it does seem like there's only a couple skills that actually profit doing the most efficient method. I know, like you mentioned, Hunter, I think that's a great example. That's one of my favorite methods. And it also has that risk involved, which I also like that we could possibly get into later with the whole predator versus prey mechanic. I know cooking is another one that doesn't always get mentioned. I think as of right now, Crom ones do technically profit. And then I think there's also Slayer, which for most mains also makes a little bit of money, but and Sep as well, I guess. But that's not really a ton of options out there for actually like viable ways to make GP with skilling. And I do wish that we had more options available. I think one of the things that that might end up happening that does kind of concern me is these methods possibly becoming heavily botted or something like that, which is kind of why I felt like skilling for the longest time hasn't really been profitable. But I think it would just overall be healthier for the game if we could make a little bit of money skilling efficiently, because the alt-scape meta has just gone so insane at this point. Like the amount of money that you need to fund 90, not just 99s, but like 200 mils is just, it's insane with the methods that we have these days, like paying runners for RC and things like that. And it's getting kind of out of hand in my opinion, because like, sure, it's one thing to assume that GP is 0 time because you can just make money on the side, but you need to consider like at what point, like during what skills are you actually going to make these alts that earn you this GP on the side. And there's not really a lot of options we have these days. Like, I guess crafting is one skill that you can, make these alts with, or like maybe do like blast furnace smithing. But like even that also has options for runners. So I do think like GP is kind of a big topic of discussion within the high level community at this point. Like wondering if we should still have some of these methods, cost like 30 bill to 200 mil. Like, I don't know if it's still considered reasonable in the current day. I know like we used to have things like like services which were legal for some time, which was a super OP way to to earn GP for a lot of skillers. But like now that we don't have that, I feel like our options are just a lot more limited, and I would like to see more profitable options be introduced in the future.
Okay, so this is one of the things I love about barb fishing is if you start doing the cut eat. Now, I'm not even going to talk about barb lore. That's more of an Iron Man method, but
Yeah.
just the simple cut eat method feels very good because you're now using the resources that you're obtaining. So you're gathering the fish and you're actually utilizing those fish instead of just dropping them all to the ground and having that kind of older system of just drop resources. You're actually cutting the resources and eating them to continue into this flow of fishing. And so you're getting a little bit of cooking and you're just maintaining this really nice rhythm where everything's interwoven and feels good. And one of the ideas, and it's kind of evolved, so I want to share what the more like evolved version of this would be, and I want to hear your take on it. I don't know if you watched a ramble I made like last year talking about a disintegrate spell or even a potential like crumble spell. So
Okay.
some sort of spell where you're mining granite and when your inventory's filling up, you cast a spell. Maybe it disintegrates 5 if that, needs to be balance sake, but ultimately in my head I would just love it to disintegrate all sandstone or I guess it wouldn't be sandstone, it would just be granite. Disintegrating all the granite that's in your inventory with a spell cast into granite dust, which can then be used on your cannonballs. So you don't need to do grotesque guardians. This could be a way. Now, let's try to avoid jumping into the effects of the economy where now granite pieces can technically be tradable granite dust in a way. But because right now I believe granite dust is untradeable, and I think Jagex made that for a reason. I don't see how that's a big deal. I wouldn't actually be totally opposed to them just making all that dust tradable in the first place. But
Yeah.
I'm imagining a system where you're mining granite, you're doing 3-tick 4G, and again, the reason I want to hear your take on this is because some very high level skillers think there's something lost when you stop the dropping. There's a skill expression that's lost, and I will want to hear your take. But I think the pros, even to a player like that, may outweigh the cons, because now you've made granite into a profitable method, slightly profitable, because ultimately, if there's a bunch of people doing granite, this granite dust wouldn't maintain value for that long. But using magic to be almost like magic imbuing like the good old days, but like you're just casting the spell, it disintegrates all the granite in your inventory, turns into a stack of granite dust, and you're building up this granite cannonball dust for later Slayer and stuff. And now you've eliminated a lot of the wrist strain for some people that do have issues dropping stuff. And I will be the first to say, yes, there is skill expression in dropping stuff, but ultimately I think it's a negligible part of the actual flow and fun of 3-tick 4G. And I think if there was a spell being able to wipe your inventory and make it feel like it's, I don't know, it makes it feel a little bit more thematic. It makes you feel like you're actually gathering resources rather than just dropping everything to the ground. I think the pros would outweigh the cons, but again, I want to hear your full thoughts on a system like this.
Yeah, so I had a very similar idea back in the day, like before we even had the granite cannonballs or anything like that. I had, I think, tweeted, it might have been Ash at the time, if we could get the superheat spell to work on granite ore. And I know that's not exactly the same thing because I did have in mind it would kind of be one at a time. I'm not necessarily opposed to it being, more like 5, 10, or even whole inventories at a time. I don't really think that the dropping is what makes granite skillful, especially at this point now that we have all these options like with left click drop and things like that. I don't really think it would be a huge deal, and I kind of like the idea of potentially making some money on the side. So I'm actually totally open to that idea. I think it's definitely a good discussion to be had. But yeah, my main thoughts before was just like that it would give a tiny bit of like smithing XP or something. It could just disintegrate the item. But I actually think I like your idea better with it possibly giving dust in return.
Yeah, I think it fits very thematic. I'm actually very relieved to kind of hear your take on this, because I don't know. I guess I get a little bit in my head about, the mentality of some skillers with very rigid beliefs, which is totally fair. This game is ultimately very subjective, and I like hearing when people are against any sort of change and, devaluing methods potentially. I think a lot of my reasoning behind changing these very locked in methods that have been the case for years and making them, quote unquote, easier is not to make them easier necessarily, but is to make them more approachable and more fun. And, and also when you're making these methods a little bit more like reasonable to grind long hours, don't get me wrong, there's some real crazy gamers that can grind to 200 mil dropping granite the whole fucking way, which is very impressive, don't get me wrong. But I think ultimately, to make the game into a better state and to allow, I don't know, players to kind of delve into tick manipulation, which is something I would love to see. I would love to see tick manipulation in general, and just rhythmic skilling, the kind of classic skilling that we see, be just more approachable to the average person that wants to participate but realizes, 5 minutes into it, this is not for me, and then they give up eternally. They're just like, I'm never doing this again. And I think, easing up these methods and maybe adding a little bit of profit would be seen as more like welcoming.
Yeah, I'm not like entirely convinced that this new spell or whatever would necessarily make the methods super easy.
It would still be difficult.
You're still gonna have to like switch to your magic tab, select the spell, possibly select the ore. I don't know how it would work exactly, but then switch back to your inventory and get back to click your knife log or whatever. And if it was one at a time, which I'm not necessarily suggesting that it should be, it would actually make the skill even more hard.
Yeah, that would be more difficult.
Yeah, it could be fun. I don't know. I think it's worth it's definitely worth bringing up though. And yeah, like I think that would be maybe possibly a good addition to the Lunar Spellbook or something like that. I could definitely see it being a good fit there.
Yeah, no, and one of the I gotta say, this is just kind of like a separate tangent on granite. There's something really special about granite and sandstone for that matter. And the thing, there's a lot of cool things about it. I mean, the flow is great. It's very just consistent, just a 4 rock pattern. It's great. But on top of that, when you have a max cape or a mining cape and you have the, Varrock body, and then even if you attach a celestial ring that's charged, I mean, you're getting these like, it's all random, but you're getting some massive chunks of XP occasionally. And that feels so good rather than it just being a consistent, let's just say, 60 XP every single time. And it's just that flat rate the whole time. It's so nice seeing, the infernal pick proc like triple, and you get a triple rock and it's all the big chunks. You're like, oh fuck yeah, like that felt good. Like I feel like there needs to be more sorts of methods where it's just pure RNG and you maybe have some items that are increasing the amount of resources you get, because seeing those big chunks of XP, really, there's something about it. It's not nothing like that feels good, getting those RNG procs where everything like lines up and it's like, oh yeah, that was a big chunk.
Oh, absolutely. I do love that, but conversely, it also kind of feels just as bad when you fail like 3 rocks in a row or whatever. You're wondering like, am I even on cycle? Like, what's going on here? But yeah, some people really like that the RNG element. I do know it does. Like right now, the mining 6 hour. I'm not sure if you're aware just how insane it actually is, but if you go tick perfect, assuming all double rolls and you never miss a tick for the entire 6 hours straight, you only have a 17% chance to actually beat the current 6 hour. Which to me is just
yeah. I've definitely heard that. I mean, now let me get this right. Is there any 6 hour that is tick perfect?
I'm not sure. I mean, like maybe I'm pretty sure that I'm assuming there were ticks missed during the mining 6 hour, even though the rates are above tick perfect average, but I'm not sure about that. I'll have to think about it. Like I think I guess Artie doesn't really count. I could see that being a tick perfect 6 hour for like maybe some level 3 or 1 defense records, but
yeah,
off the top of my head, I don't think there are any tick perfect 6 hours, but Feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that one.
It is fascinating how you know, you have skilling. I mean, because if you were to see an Inferno record, you know, Inferno Cape speed run, just you know, if you were to see that and it's tick perfect, first of all, that's never going to happen. It's just way too insane, like, to line up
Yeah,
everything and get everything perfect, even, you know, not getting good RNG on hits and stuff like. But when you have a very basic skilling pattern, that's just the same thing for 6 hours. I mean, you do hit a point where it really is just reset this on average probably 6 times, do it tick perfect, and you might beat the record. That's
of
insane.
course. Yeah, I mean the thing is, we've seen plenty of tick perfect hours. Like I've done tick perfect hours myself, but like when you scale it up to 6 hours straight, it's I don't know, it gets really really hard. At least for me to
Hmm.
just never miss a single tick. Also, not get like a single lag spike or anything. Like
Yeah.
even a 500 millisecond spike can make you lose a tick. So I don't know. It gets really really difficult in my opinion. But you never know. You might actually end up seeing a tick perfect binding 6 hour happen one of these days. I
I
think
think
that'd
that
be
the god
crazy.
tier
But
RNG as well.
oh yeah, I would love to see that, to be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah,
Yeah. No, that's and then again, like the tick perfect, I would also say is not missing any double rolls, of course.
yeah,
So
that's got to be included.
yeah, that was always a really interesting thing, is learning about the double rolling mechanics, because that was not a well known phenomenon. You know, like years and years back, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, that was
Yeah,
people didn't understand why they were only getting 118k XP an hour. Like, what am I doing wrong?
yeah. I don't
Yeah.
even know how it was discovered to begin with because it's such a weird mechanic. Like for people who don't know, if you start a 3 tick cycle and you walk towards the rock on the same tick, like you click to mine it, for some reason it gives you essentially a double roll chance. You don't actually have um, a chance at necessarily receiving double ores unless like your body or your cape procs, but it just increases your success rate by a significant amount.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's something it's a relatively new discovery, and yeah, it kind of just blows my mind that people were able to figure that one out.
Yeah, because I remember, and this was a really cool sort of like thing about that. You know, if you were to do if you were to do um, you know, 3 tick granite with the double rolls. So I would like to say 1.5 tick, but it isn't 1.5 tick because you can never actually
Yeah.
successfully roll 2 rocks. But that, because I remember I was like, ooh, what would be so cool is to do 2 tick, you know, granite with the crumbles. I have a video like
Yeah.
years back of me like dropping carambolas on the ground and doing like a
No
2.5
way.
tick granite and sandstone, which is fucking fun. But it's just not worth it because you're getting single rolls for all of it. So even though it's 2.5 tick, like surely this would at least be somewhat reasonable to, you know, close enough to 3 tick 4G. It's just not, because the single rolls are so crappy. When you're doing a single roll with a granite rock, I think it's like
Yeah,
at
I've
99, like
seen some players do
70%.
like some PvP world shenanigans too, where they'll have like the dart alts and
Yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
that. Um, Maybe there's some potential there for methods in the future. I'm not really sure, but yeah, like you said,
There
I don't
really
really think they're
isn't.
worth it, right? You don't think so?
There isn't, because I'm trying to remember how this worked, because basically, even if you were to do 2 tick 3G, let's just say you could actually get a single roll every 2 ticks on granite.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. Okay, that might be better. I can't remember the math now. I remember like looking this up. I was just remember like theoretically thinking if you could actually get a single roll every 2 ticks. I don't even think it was better than
okay,
the
that's
tip.
surprising to hear,
It
to
might
be
be a little
honest.
bit better. I think maybe it was the 2 tick with the sandstone and the granite that wasn't making it, because the sandstone was less.
Yeah,
I can't
yeah,
fully remember, but yeah, the single rolls are just devastating. Like you just fail so many of them.
yeah. I know somebody listening knows the math on this, like
Yeah.
exactly what a single I think like what 3 tick granite actually ends up being. It's like 2.3 something. I don't remember, 2.7, 2.8, somewhere around there. That's probably
Mm.
completely wrong, but that's what I remember it being. I could be wrong,
No,
but
you're probably right. I think 2-tick single rolls would be better if it was all granite. I think
yeah,
it was the sandstone mixture that I'm getting confused with in my head.
yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it is. It's interesting. Kind of. I don't know. I got really into this like when I was maxing Sae Bae years back, just kind of like discovering, and that was back when. Oh, I don't know if you remember that time when auto casting, you could like 2-tick basically anything ever.
Yeah, yeah, that was brief, but it was cool while it lasted, I guess.
Dude,
I kind of miss like back in those days when I
yeah.
feel like there's something so magical about like these new methods being
Yeah.
discovered. I do feel like some of that's kind of lost. I know I was talking to somebody recently about this, how they think that like just the amount of knowledge that players have these days, they don't really think there's going to be any new methods being discovered unless new methods are introduced
Hmm.
by with new updates and things like that. But I disagree. I think that there's always potential for some crazy new discovery. You never know, like what could be discovered in the future. So I definitely kind of am more hopeful in that sense that we'll potentially be seeing new things in the future.
Yeah, I remain hopeful. I mean, this game is not as broad as our life on Earth, where scientific discovery is seemingly endless. I mean, there's just a whole
Yeah,
ocean to explore. We're just a drop in, basically. But like RuneScape, there is a cap. I mean, there just simply is. This isn't as complex as reality. But
true.
I do remember, for one, I think one of my first, I think it is my first YouTube video was the 2-tick dark crabs, and that was using that autocast, and I was like, this is such a fucking cool method. I think the rates I put in there weren't quite accurate, but it did end up. I remember doing an hour where it was about 125k or something XP an hour, gaining profit as well. If you successfully leave with all the dark crabs you caught, and I think that was just an amazing method. There was also, if you really wanted to alt it, you could even have your guy constantly fishing and like either drop the fish over to an alt or trade the fish quickly to an alt or something and even get better rates while maintaining the fish. But
True, true.
that was cool. And then I love the 2-tick monkfish where you're grabbing those like mystic skeletons in the fucking
Yeah.
that little house and like dragging they are so glitchy. They are like one of the most buggy NPCs in this game, but it was just awesome discovering those little mechanics.
Yeah, was that the first recorded example of two tick dark crabs? I'm pretty sure the
Yeah.
monkfish is definitely. Okay,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool, and I think it's probably decent for pet too, right?
Well, you
I'm
can't do it anymore because they fixed
oh,
autocasting.
oh, right. That's kind of
So
sad.
it is. It is a little bit sad. It's one of those things where it's one of the consequences of I mean, because I think the pros outweigh the cons. It's so much nicer having your staff on autocast and actually not having this weird delay. We all got used to that. If you were autocasting, just okay, click before click 1 tick before you're actually wanting to cast if you don't want to lose any ticks, or manually do the cast, which is obnoxious.
True. Yeah, I don't really know why they removed it. I guess it was an unintended mechanic, but I
Yeah.
don't remember there being like anything blaringly overpowered being introduced at the time.
Hmm.
So I do think that it was probably something that could have been left in the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, it would have been hard to kind of leave that in. The dark fishing crab spots in particular are kind of glitchy because they've made some weird coding in that wilderness resource area where, one, if somebody's throwing darts, if you're under combat in any sense, you cannot catch fish. You just
Oh,
can't.
I
Yeah,
did not know that.
and they did it. They did it in that specific area to prevent boxing. So you couldn't just have a level 3 player just
Yeah,
boxing you repeatedly and you still catch the fish. So you can't have somebody throwing darts at you. Doesn't work. So that was why that method worked there, and it didn't work at other methods. The auto casting didn't work on fishing spots you would have thought would have worked. It was specifically that area because I don't know, the fishing spot was just wonky. It was weird.
yeah. It's
So
it's it's weird how there's some inconsistencies. I feel like with fishing, for example. I'm pretty sure like one of the first three tick methods that I saw was actually a PvP world method at Barb. Pretty sure it was one defense that did that, aka Jamal's Batman. Like for example, Barb just has some weird mechanics in general. Like I still don't understand how 2.5 tick actually works. Like it's just so weird how you 3 tick it and then you 2 tick using a Cronbon, and somehow that works and it just equals 2.5 ticks. So like I just don't even know. I'm sure somebody has a better understanding than me, but yeah, some of these fishing spots just have some weird programming behind them, I feel.
Well, the Karam one makes sense because it is a 2 tick eat, and some of the gnome food as well. If you go to the second floor of the gnome stronghold, you can buy gnome food, and that is also a 2 tick eat. So
Yeah,
it makes
I used to
yeah.
I used king worms because I did do a 30 hour of 2.5 tick barb. So I was going through all the items and I just was like found the thing that was the cheapest at the time, which
So
was king
king
worms.
worms work.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't think they heal a lot, so I don't think they make a great combo food. But yeah, they do work, and they were pretty cheap compared to the cooked crampons. So yeah, that was cool. But like, I don't understand why you can do that, but other potential 2 tick action cycles don't work there.
Oh, I see what you mean. Well, what would be? Are you talking about like darting and like?
Sure, that's like one example. Yeah.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. I don't know the full mechanics on it. You know what? One thing, it wouldn't need to be barbarian fishing. I think barbarian fishing is pretty well balanced. But I was thinking, how cool would it be to introduce some new fish in the game that's very similar to barbarian fishing, except when you cut the fish, the innards of the fish is actually a 2 tick eat. So
Okay.
you don't have to trade the Karam
Yeah.
ones over and over. You're actually getting this food that is allowing you to maintain a 2 tick cycle on repeat. And if you run out of food, it goes back to 3 tick. I thought that would be a super, super interesting method that would just keep you on your toes and just, I don't know, feel very interesting.
True.
And
I'm totally open to that idea. I mean, I do think that it is kind of hard to balance fishing with driftnet being in the meta. It's just, I don't know, driftnet is just like so insanely good. So I don't really know if it would necessarily be super worth doing from like an XP perspective,
yeah,
unless they
yeah.
really, really like cranked up the rates. But I don't know, maybe like a profit option could be an idea. Like maybe having some random chance at receiving some sort of item that had value when you cut a fish. Like I don't know. I'm definitely open to the idea though.
Yeah, no, I think that would actually be really cool. Yeah, just have some valuables that, occasionally spring out.
Hmm.
That's I want to kind of hear your thoughts on balancing in general. We have so many methods in this game
Yeah.
that are completely imbalanced. I mean, just dead methods, dead on arrival. You'll never touch it. I think at least what you were talking about very early on, you're actually kind of okay with the game kind of being as wonky as it is and some things just really not being
Yeah.
viable. But I'm one of the players that if you have a method, and I'll just bring up one, for example, big net fishing. Big net fishing is something that nobody will ever do. It's fucking pointless.
True.
The XP rates and the rewards are completely just abysmal. Even if you're 2 ticking it, I think I made a video on it. It only gets up to like maybe 90K. And there's no such thing as like a crystal net, a crystal big net, or a dragon big net. So you're always just getting the bare minimum, default like percentage catch. But I was thinking like, how cool would it be if you had a method like big net fishing, but you actually are rewarded in a way. And I think it's kind of a more difficult thing to discuss this with like a main that really the focus is on XP. You don't really care about GP. There's always alts, GP zero
Yeah.
time theoretically. But for an Iron Man's perspective, and you play a hardcore now, like having more variety in methods where, okay, this isn't the best XP, but it's still another fishing method you can do. And we've properly balanced out the rewards to be maybe potentially useful. Maybe it has some weird unique. Maybe you could even get a dragon harpoon from it if you did it for long enough. Like dragon harpoon's another discussion point. That is, I don't know why it's so
True.
fucking rare in
Yeah.
worms. But yeah, do you have any thoughts on just balancing with dead on arrival methods?
So I think there's too much out there to be able to say like every single method should be balanced. I think like with your example, I like with the big net, I'm willing to bet that there's some giga snowflake wheelchair out there that might actually have that method be meta. I don't know, but like I think it's cool that some of these super restricted, like chunk style or area restricted builds might actually make use of these methods. I think that's potentially a good thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, I just think that there's too much out there to be balancing absolutely everything.
Yeah,
I do think though, like sometimes they've missed the mark with like I think I was kind of surprised to see during the agility rebalances that they didn't actually touch Prif, but like I'm pretty sure Prif right now is less XP than Artie, right? If I'm not
yeah.
mistaken. So that was kind of an odd thing to me, especially seeing it. I think it was even included in the list, and they just didn't do anything with it. So I
Mm,
don't know how I feel about that exactly. I know that there's still some good methods that might make it viable, like training prayer um, during that course. But
it's true
yeah,
because you
for
have a
the
bank right there.
yeah, exactly. I think it's quite good actually. Still, even with the rates lower than Artie, it might still be worth doing.
And
I know it's been one defense HP for a while.
oh, really? Because I know, one of it is the requirement's only 75 agility. Does it scale? I can't remember if like the failing or something scales it properly or something, but I know they also buffed the crystal shards, which I guess is kind of a mute point because like everything in Perf got buffed. So it's not
Yeah,
like you need to do Perf agility more. So,
yeah. I was kind of surprised that they even let us get tradable shards to begin with because I think on release we didn't have that stuff, right?
hmm.
um, Kind of actually like force you to do skilling
Yeah,
in that
yeah. If
area.
you wanted to keep up your crystal harpoon, for example, and get maximum fishing, if you were doing two tick fishing, you would need to do as much crystal hunting as possible. But yeah, now you just buy the teleport seeds or whatever.
Yeah,
Okay, there's so much I want to talk about with skilling and stuff, but I want to talk about skilling competitions and records. It sounds like this is something you've been passionate about for several years, and it is one of those niche categories, especially now that the top page is filled up and there's not as much competition seen in the skilling space. I could be
yeah,
wrong on that. I want to hear your overall thoughts on just skilling competition in general, especially for mains. I mean, Iron Man hasn't filled up quite yet, so there's that little element of competition still. But yeah, let's go into it.
sure. So I've been hearing the argument, like some people like to say that skilling is dead or whatever, just because the top page slots are no longer there. And while I do agree there is some truth to players not necessarily going as hard as they have in the past in terms of just like massive HP years or anything like that. But my counter argument to that is just take a look at the skilling competitions that have been happening recently because they are just continually getting just more and more insane with each one that comes out. And people have, been consistently setting, new records and things like that. So from my perspective, skilling is more alive and well than it's ever been, really. Um, so like skilling competitions are something that I've been really enjoying ever since I kind of returned back to the game in 2023. And when I first came back, I wasn't really expecting things to be the way they are now. I think that this is partially due to actually one player in particular really, really pushing the limits of just how much somebody is willing to play during a single week. And that player is the Inducted. Um, I first kind of found out about him during the Solace 10-year anniversary skilling comp, which I was the captain in, but I didn't really do a lot of research. Like I wasn't really necessarily familiar with his game, to be honest, and he just kind of blew everyone out of the water. Like I was trying to compete with him at the start. Like I think I was up for like 42 to 46 hours or something like that, just doing
Jesus.
3 tick mining, and
Oh
he
my
was still
god.
going. And I was like, okay, this guy's got to go to sleep soon at some point. And I thought that he was. And I even told him, I was like, all right, I'm going to go to bed. And I woke up. So this would now be over 50 hours into the competition, and the guy is still going.
What
So
the fuck?
like people have just been going absolutely insane during these comps. Like new records are consistently being set. Um,
Let me
and
just interrupt real
yeah,
quick.
yeah, yeah.
For the I have a broad audience of, people
Right.
that probably are not skilled. There's probably people thinking, okay, surely this guy's multi-logging. What do you have
Uh,
to say about something that, with an accusation like that, or, you know,
by multi-logging, do you mean account sharing
yeah,
or
account sharing. Let me correct that. Yeah, account sharing
okay?
with another player,
So
and he's pretending like he's one person.
so I mean, it definitely sounds uh completely like inhuman, especially if I were to say like how many hours in the week he ended up playing.
Hmm.
But my defense to that, and the reason why I don't necessarily just want to jump to conclusions, is because he was live like I'm pretty sure he was live for like all those 50 hours straight, and I can't really picture exactly how that would work with account sharing in a situation like that where you're you're on voice, you're talking to people in calls, you're live streaming, things like that. Like it to me it seems less likely that somebody would be able to pull that off unless maybe they had like a brother in real life that could swap in their chair or something. And I honestly I just can't really see it working
Hmm.
that well. So
The
I
other,
don't really think he's cheating. There's been a number of players that have been able to do similar hours to that. Like even during that Solace 10-year anniversary comp I did, it was I believe a 151 HP week of mining. So it's definitely like reasonable to do these kind of hours if you have the motivation and you're willing to really push yourself. And I did that without caffeine, by the way. So I think you could definitely push it even further than that.
that is, well, actually, I think you're probably doing it in the healthiest way possible. I think caffeine eventually just ends up being a detriment, especially with those super long hours. If you're just trying to, squeeze in another, however many hours, maybe a caffeine spike would help. But if you're really doing 45 some hours, like Jesus, like you gotta, it's almost like you gotta be on drugs, like some sort of like Adderall or something. But I feel
Right.
like caffeine would just be the that would just be bad. I mean, it would just be a detriment. I think of this. This is something where some people's bodies are just built different. Like I remember doing a 27.5 hour stream is my longest one ever, and I was dying. I mean, I was trying to go for a 30,
Yeah.
and I mean the whole time though I'm doing a very complex method. I mean, complex, relative to just doing the same rocks over and over. Like I'm killing Corp, and I killed Corp solo like 150 times or something. That was back with the older thing. So it's like there's more going on, I feel like, and I'm trying to entertain a chat, which doesn't
Yep.
help as well, and you're just draining that energy. But holy shit, I felt miserable. But then you see people like Mr. No Sleep and Alfie that have done, I don't actually know if they did the 100 hour, maybe
I'm pretty sure
shy
Mr.
of
No
it.
Sleep broke 100
Okay,
hours.
he did. I don't know if
Yeah.
Alfie ever hit the 100. I know he was really pushing for it. Maybe he did. But I'm just wondering, like, are they on Adderall? Like, what is happening? Like, is that a natural
I,
thing to be able to just withstand? Like, that is nuts.
yeah, that's something else. And especially doing it while streaming, I feel like that adds a whole
Oh,
other element that's just mentally draining. I think that what you're doing in game matters a lot as well. I've done a lot of 30 hours and nothing has compared to um, even the barb 30 hour. I was completely fried. Just mentally, I don't know, it just did something to me. I was having some weird things happen. And also the cooking 30 hour that I did recently, that was equally as bad, I want to say.
oh God.
I would not recommend anyone to try that at home, to be fair.
Is that all one
Um,
tick Karams?
yes, that was one tick
Jesus.
rows.
Oh my God, that
Yeah,
sounds
no
horrible.
breaks. It was just, yeah, those methods really fry you.
Uh,
But then again, I've done some things like mining was actually pretty chill in comparison. Like I know that sounds probably insane to say that like three tick mining is a chill method, but for some reason I think it's just the fact that there's not really a lot of thinking involved. You can just kind of turn your brain off. Um, it made it just a lot easier mentally, I think, and physically it wasn't too bad either. It wasn't like cooking was. Um,
mhm.
so yeah, the only thing with mining is you got to deal with when you're getting super sleep deprived. Stocks will be made, and that's just inevitable, and that definitely is gonna throw off your rates. unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm always impressed with the amount that people can really like game hard. I miss I miss Iron Higer. He was like the
Yeah.
king of Iron. I mean, I don't know what the comparing him to like mains back then. I honestly don't know because he is playing a separate game mode entirely, so it's just different. But I remember his like 50 mil agility month of just sepulcher the whole time. Like that's just wild
Yep.
to me.
He's in a big mining month too. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure he's ranked deadman mode, rank one in deadman mode as well.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah,
he
he's done a
also
lot.
he was also the first for leagues, just this league's 5 that's still going on. He was the first to Dragon Cup.
Okay, yeah. I mean, he's just he's just a gamer. I don't really view him any different being an Iron Man as
Yeah,
versus
I guess
other.
I just said that just because I don't actually know how to compare him to other players, that are probably putting in more hours potentially in some areas just because he is just on a different kind of high scores, different.
I mean, maybe I still think he has the rank one mining month. It probably holds a bunch of other recs as well. Like he
Okay.
just, yeah, he's just a whole other beast. I
He,
definitely have a ton of respect for him as a player.
Same,
That's for sure.
and he keeps playing. It's not like a Lynx Titan. Again, tons of respect to Lynx Titan, but it's like he got 4.6, dipped, and I don't think we've even. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he's shown his face again in the game besides maybe logging in
Uh,
once.
I've heard some rumors.
Oh shit.
I don't have like a ton of data to back this up. It's literally I've been speaking with somebody who apparently has done a little bit of research on him, and apparently I can't verify this, but
Hmm.
apparently they found an account that he's been playing on the side. I
Oh
can't
shit.
give any RSNs or anything, but
Oh
like
shit.
it's definitely possible. And I know there's also been the whole I don't know if you're aware of the fifth hardcore Iron Man lol is Link's Titan theory.
No, there's
um,
no way.
it's funny to think about just because of the similarities between them as players, like both having solid color profile pictures. I know that he's from a different country, at least on
Mm.
his temple, which is like the most compelling argument against it. But they're both like very you're kind of quiet. They didn't really interact with the community a ton, but they both played insane hours. Very talented players, obviously, both of them. And I don't know, it kind of makes sense for me to for Lynx to run it back on an iron. I don't know. I like to think about it at least.
People were thinking Rodney Farva was also Link's Titan.
I've heard that one too. I don't know. It's fun to think about. I'm not really sure. He's also kind of a mysterious player.
Hmm.
There's not really a lot known about him, I feel like. And yeah, he definitely keeps to himself. So I could also see why people would think that too.
So let's see. What are your thoughts just on the top page having filled up? You're saying, I think you kind of like pushed back a little bit on just me kind of hinting at the fact that skilling might not be as popular or the competition might not be as intense as it used to be years back when Hey Jace was still pushing for rank 2 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you feel about just having the top page fill? How many people do have 200 mil all now at this point? Over
It's
50, right?
59 now it looks like, and that's not even including level threes
Mm.
that also have it. Um, yeah, it's I don't know, from my perspective, I've just never been the type of player to like that's not what motivated me to play or skill just because like I obviously never actually had a shot at ever achieving a permanent rank. I mean I could see why people wouldn't be as motivated to play. But there's definitely some other examples to look at of players that are still going hard, that are still doing huge years. I'm definitely gonna miss some names here, but like I mean just look at Turnt for example. I know Necro's been gaming a lot, and of course the Iron Man community has also been going hard. Although I guess they do still have free slots open.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's like I think that there's a lot of different reasons as to why somebody might go for a goal such as 200 mil all, and I don't think just achieving a top page spot is necessarily the only reason as to why somebody might do it. I think a lot of people probably just skill just for the love of the game, and just maybe an addiction or whatever. But I think there's a lot of people out there that are just passionate about skilling, regardless of what high score they'll end up on.
That's fair. Okay, I need to hear your take on sailing potentially coming out, most likely coming out, and
Yeah.
your thoughts. Again, you're probably not the person that would have the most care about this, but there are some players, that saw the early 200 mil all grind as a marathon. And when you
Yeah.
drop one skill, it's more of a sprint. And
Right.
losing potential overall ranks for these players that do care about it. Again, I need to almost like caveat and just say, like, I know there's going to be people listening to this that are going to be in the comments being like, dude, who fucking cares? Well, these people care. And
Yeah.
why does it matter? Like, the people that do care about the ranks, they're the people that are being affected by this. So I'm wondering to you, is there any um, kind of system where people can keep their old ranks that they achieved, or are you totally on board with there being a complete reshuffle of the top page? Should Link's Titan, if he doesn't log in, just be completely wiped from rank one? Should there maybe be some legacy high scores where you can see previous years of the people that were rank one at some point, and then now we have the new ones? What are your overall thoughts on this whole new skill coming out?
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily entirely opposed to there being a new skill. I mean, I do think that it is a little bit sad for me to see, people like Link's Titan lose their spot at number one. I think that that's like a very well-earned spot. And I don't think that legacy high scores would necessarily do it justice, unfortunately. Um, I do think that with sailing in particular, I think some people might be surprised to hear that I actually did vote yes for it at some point many years ago. I did kind of change my mind on that eventually. And overall, I haven't really been a fan of what I've seen in their blog posts and things like that. But you never know how it might end up. I know some people really like the idea and are excited about the Barracuda trials, for example. I think that could be some potentially interesting content, but it really just comes down to execution. And I won't lie, like I don't really have a ton of faith in the dev team as much as some other people, just based off of some of the big releases that we've seen. I know when I was kind of newer to the game, I was really excited about Zaya, and I was so disappointed when it actually came out. I think a lot of people also share that that same feeling as well. So I guess we'll just have to see how it goes. I do think that, as somebody who's been playing RS3 on the side, I actually really like some of the new skills that RS3 has introduced. So, like, I'm not just completely against a new skill, just in general, but I didn't like their proposals that much. I was not a fan of shamanism, and also the other things that they had mentioned. I can't remember. I think the other one is like animal husbandry or something. That could have just probably been an extension of farming, I think. But for example, like one of the skills that I really like from RS3 would probably be, I think archaeology is my favorite. For those that aren't aware of how archaeology works, it's basically like there's all these different areas that have these kind of deep lore and history behind them. Like there's an area usually centered around the gods. Like there's like this Bandos area that was like this kind of war torn, tunnels where there's all this different ancient armor to be discovered and things like that. And you take these, these rare artifacts and you essentially repair them using materials that you gather while you're training the skill. And I think just from a lore perspective, like I'm not necessarily a lore nerd. I actually I don't really care that much about that stuff, but I do know that there's a lot of people who really do, and I think those people are some of the people that would really appreciate a skill like that the most.
Mm. So, what are your thoughts though on the high scores? You mentioned you wouldn't really, you do have some kind of like feeling for keeping, Link's Titan as rank one. Do you have any sort of system that would work? Are you fine if
I
they do the reshuffle, or do you just not really have many thoughts?
I do care. Like don't get me wrong. Like I just because I don't have a shot at ever getting top page, being a pure,
Hmm.
doesn't mean that I don't care about the friends that I do have that have top page slots in the high scores. Um, I think it's really sad to see that, them lose their rank. And at this point, I generally would prefer if we didn't necessarily get a new skill for old school. But what I'm trying to say is, if it's done right, I think it could potentially be worth, shaking it up in
Okay.
that sense. Like those players, like sure that, I don't necessarily want to see them lose their ranks, but people are still going to know what they did, and they get to, enjoy it for the many years that they've had these achievements for.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like we should just expect those ranks to be permanent for until the end of time. Like I think that might be probably asking for too much. But yeah, I don't necessarily think a legacy high scores will do them justice. I do think that they probably should still be introduced. I just don't think people are going to be pulling that page up very often, to be honest with you.
Well, I think the legacy high scores, it's not for just the average person to look up and care, but it would be just a sort of like recognition, sort of just like a page in history of like, okay, this is how old, because I'm imagining, let's just say old school lasts another 30 years or something. Like, be cool to look back in the decades and see these old names, even if it gets shuffled up. What's going to suck is,
Yeah.
15, 20 years from now, again, it's not like this really matters to the average player, but it'd be cool to look back at some sort of legacy high scores and just be like, oh yeah, I remember that guy.
Yeah.
And in my head, I don't know if they have any sort of data on this retroactively, but I was just thinking, how cool would it be is just if at the end of every year they had a saved archive of what the high scores used to look like. So you could actually look back at December 31st, 2013, see what the high scores look like. And then
Yeah.
December 31st, 2014, see what the high scores look like. Just seeing those names. Again, they couldn't obviously archive every fucking high score. It'd be hundreds of thousands or millions. But just the top, 100 of each skill and of each, of just like the main high score. Or even just the top page of the game mode categories that were out. They wouldn't even need the skills because those are already archived because there's no cap. I mean, the cap is 200 mil, so those would always be the same.
Right. So, I mean, I do think that would be fun to look back on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it actually might be possible to view something like that on some of these tracking websites that we have, like Temple or CML or Weisel, and they might have some of that data. So I don't know. It could very well be possible to still view those things if people are interested in, taking a step back in time. But one thing I want to mention though is that I don't think RS3 ever did any legacy high scores or anything like that, and yet people still know who Zesma is. Like
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that these things are mandatory for preserving people's legacies.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I at the same time, I do think that it probably should be introduced regardless. But one thing that I would like to wonder about is what do we do about potential future skills that are introduced even after sailing, assuming the sailing release ever
Yeah.
happens and goes well. Like, are we just gonna have a new legacy high score for every single update like that?
Well, that's why I think just the legacy high scores being a yearly thing, just just a snapshot of at the end of every year would almost be the most appropriate. So you just sort by year of what the high scores looked like.
Okay.
Again,
Yeah, I guess.
it's not a perfect solution, but it's something just as a sort of piece of history. And I do, because I'm one of those people that, I like having this discussion with high level skillers, just seeing, because when sailing was first proposed, there was a lot of discussion about, okay, what's going to happen? Like we kind of want to, the people that really earned this rank, it would be cool to have them still have that rank there. But ultimately, the shaking up makes the most sense. It just does.
Yeah.
Being able to shake it up and being able to see who's going to get the rank one now makes the most sense. Although, kind of sucks for the people that really did the whole marathon and then aren't, shown as the rank they, might have been if sailing had been out on release. So
I'm really excited though about that that race that
Same.
you're talking about, the sprint. Like a lot of people are speculating and are just they want to see who's gonna do it, because we know just based off of how the comps have been going that these are gonna be some insane hours that people are gonna put in, even to get like a top 10 spot it's gonna be ridiculous. I feel like so. I'm really looking forward to seeing that go
I am
down.
too. It's going to be
Yeah.
fun to see. I'm curious. Let me get your thought on this. Who do you think will be rank one sailing? And
Okay.
but not just name wise, but do you think it'll be a already 200 mil all player, or do you think it won't be a 200 mil all player that'll get rank
So
one sailing?
I do believe it will be a 200 mil all player. Um, although I really can't be certain of that. It could be somebody completely different than what everyone's expecting. Like that
Hmm.
very well could happen. What I really hope isn't going to happen is there has been some account sharing cheating scandals that have happened historically, and with RS3 when the stakes are this high, like a rank one spot and the overall high
Mm,
scores. I really hope that doesn't happen. I do have some predictions, just based off of people that I know that are likely going to be playing. But honestly, like it's too hard to say really, as to who could take it. I wish that some of the people that went hard for 200 mil all are still going to be going for 200 mil sailing, but I know that's also not necessarily the case. I think some of these players now have a lot of stuff going on IRL and things like that, which is unfortunate that they won't be able to compete. I do know that some people who have busy lives right now are also going to be taking a lot of time off for this event. So, um, yeah, I don't really want to be listing off names of who I think is going to take it necessarily, just because I'm probably going to be forgetting some players that are probably going for it right now, and I don't want to be I would feel bad if I left them out. So I'll leave it to let the best player win.
all right. Okay. You know what the next point is. I want to talk about Gnome Cube. This is the thing
Yeah, I
that
knew this is. Yeah, I
the,
figured this is coming.
this is and I don't know how much you've seen my content over the years. I don't know if you're like a Ramble listener, Sae Bae cast, and you've heard some of the skilling casts. This is
Yeah, I've listened to a few. Yeah,
okay. So this is something I'm definitely passionate about, and it's definitely
yeah.
become fully memeified. Probably basically from the inception of me, like really grasping onto this. I want to hear your take though, and what
Okay.
whether for or against.
Okay, so I think most people know that I'm quite heavily against this particular update. I don't necessarily think that the reasons why it's being proposed are going to be effective, such as I can't really see people who aren't already interested in being and being interested in doing tick manipulation, like actually having it have any influence on whether or not they start doing it. I think that like the people that aren't interested, just I feel like they might think that it's going to be a big change, and that it might get them interested. Like they might say that, but then I feel like they're just going to try it and spend 5 minutes doing it, and then just go back to AFK, like pretty much exactly like what happened before it was introduced. Like I really just can't see it
Hmm.
being a good introduction to like high level skilling, but I just think it's going to end up being just making skilling way too easy. I know that the one click that it does save isn't necessarily a very important one, but it does make some methods a lot easier. Particularly three tick crafting will just become like almost trivial. And yeah, just overall, I just am in general, like my argument just basically just boils down to not wanting skilling to become even easier than it already is. But I would like to hear your takes, as to why you think it would be a good addition as well.
Yeah, no, that's fair. One thing I'll just point out is I actually do ask my audience, like who doesn't tick manipulate right now that would actually want this, and there is, obviously active people that are opposed to any such gnome cube idea. Again, does not need to be a gnome cube, just any sort of three tick,
Yeah.
one click item like a Celestial Spark. Again, Celestial Spark was completely unpulled. It just came into the game. It was a
Yep.
one click item. Nobody had a problem with it. It was great. I almost imagine myself never having caught on to the gnome cube, which I need to always add. This was not my idea. This was a separate idea that I just loved. And so I, you know, grappled onto it and just haven't let go. And yeah, they could just introduce something that's a three tick, one click thing. And just like, I don't even know if people would be that opposed to it if it just slid into the game if I had never talked about it. It could be.
Yeah.
But I want to share because there's people in my audience say I would start tick manipulating more if it was one fewer click. And there is some data to kind of back that up. When I came out with 4-tick 3G, that little method with the 3 granite rocks, using a slush spark, many people have come to me on my stream and have even said, okay, this is an amazing method. It's so chill. It's not breaking my wrist. And it's something I can do long hours. And it's chill. There's not many clicks going on. And I still am in this rhythm. And it's 4-tick. It's slightly easier. And it's significantly less APM, but you're still getting that good flow state. And so people do jump onto tick manipulation when it's approachable enough. And there is some backing up of that. Do I have a bunch of data, like that I've done research on? Not necessarily, but this is, I'm gonna share this. This is actually what I shared with the, I made a clip of the Uberu cast a month ago. And in that I was kind of talking about, just me getting irritated with Automelogy and Hebox for not, just being fully on board with my idea, which is, kind of just like for fun. But I just want to share what I said in the comment section to Caleb after the fact. And I feel like not many people got to see this because I posted like a day after the video upload. But this is what I have to say. So I don't claim to think the Gnome Cube will fix all problems. I think it'll have a very positive effect on any player that enjoys tick manipulation already and the casual skiller looking to interact with the game without annihilating their wrists in the process. I remember an old video of yours, this is again addressing Caleb, where you were learning 3-tick 4G and you expressed just how it wouldn't be a viable method long-term due to inevitable fatigue. Most players feel how you felt then. They don't want to touch any form of tick manipulation with a 10-foot pole because of how high the barrier to entry is and how high the APM is. The Gnome Cube, or any item that can start a 3-tick skilling timer in one click, is a great starting point to allow players to dip their toes in tick manipulation without the normal frustrations knife log or herb tar present. In some cases, a method's APM is dropped by 50% if an item like a Gnome Cube would be introduced, and I argue that nothing of legitimate value is lost by reducing that unnecessary click. Tick manipulation is fun because of rhythm and flow, not by the amount of clicks. Again, that's subjective, but I do hold to that point. And then I do continue on saying, my fear is that skilling will continually be dumbed down in the future if we don't address the knife log problem. Gnome Cube, of course, doesn't alone solve the skilling crisis, as ultimately rhythm and skill expression can be had without any form of clicking your inventory every 3 ticks. Gnome Cube will, however, make a sizable impact on narrowing the disparity between the lowest effort and highest effort methods. And then, Caleb, in his comment above, was saying this sounds like an emotional topic for you. And so I address it by saying this is an emotional topic for me because I get upset seeing more and more skilling methods introduced to the game that actively ignore rhythm and skill expression. For example, Temperos and Giant's Foundry. Temperos being, you go over to the cooking area. If you try to click anything else during that, it interrupts your actions. There's no such thing as a PvP Temperos where you can have somebody throwing stuff at you. You can't knife log anything. Everything is just how it is. And don't even try to do any form of tick manipulation. It won't work. It'll slow you down. The same thing with Giant's Foundry. It's just go to the station and sit there like a fucking idiot, like a toddler. The vast majority of players can't even see how fun skilling can truly be because most of the time rhythm and skilling is tied with extremely high APM, which is entirely unnecessary. Lowering the bar by reducing APM, I argue, is the first step forward in showing the community that skilling should embrace rhythm and flow and not just be pure brain rot. There's a growing number, this is the final point I mentioned, there's a growing number of players that absolutely despise skilling and would 100% vote for doubling or tripling the rates of their least favorite skills. That terrifies me, and I feel the only solution is to start making strides toward what makes skilling enjoyable. A Gnome Cube or a 1-click 3-tick cycle starter will be a healthy step toward that solution.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I'd like to address a few of the points that you made, though.
Let's hear it.
I do think that in particular, when Automelogy was doing Granite, I do think it was a lot different back then. It was we didn't have left click drop or shift click drop or whatever. It was you actually had to right click each item to drop it, and
Well, back
I
then
do
there was AHK, and everybody used
right.
AHK, and that was arguably easier.
Potentially that's a good point. That is true. But yeah, I do think though that there have been a couple buffs that have kind of made it potentially more viable. So I think that's why he very early on was wondering about its potential viability. But the one thing I would like to address though is I don't really understand the unnecessary click argument.
Hmm.
I don't really see what makes it unnecessary. Like there's so many other things in the game where you have to use an item on something else to get a particular result. Like when you're making potions or something like that.
Hmm.
Like, does that make that also is that also considered an unnecessary click? Like should we be able to do one tick potions just by spamming
Well, the
left
way I
click on an unfinished potion? Like
no, that's a good point. The way I see knife log and herb tar is you're not actually making a tar. Like you're not. That's not what you're trying to do. You just have to do that to start a 3-tick action. And we now see 3-tick skilling has become an actual like thing. So again, this is all kind of like a cultural thing toward the game, but 3-tick skilling is a legitimate thing now that people say it's 3-tick skilling. And how does 3-tick skilling start? Well, you have these weird ass items that you're gonna make, but then you interrupt that action with something else and it causes something. So in my head, I'm trying to figure out how to express this properly, but in my head, it's just there's 3-tick cycle starters, and those should just be one clickable, similar to how a Salaster's Bark is. You click it, it starts a 4-tick action.
right.
Nobody cares that a Salaster's Bark is turning into a battle staff and you're making something that takes 4 ticks. It's not even about that. It's like we ignore the fact that Vam Braces and a Kebbit Claw make this fucking thing. It has nothing to do with what you're actually using those items for. And so I'm ignoring that, and I'm just saying that starting a 3-tick cycle or starting any sort of cycle optimally when used in skilling, when used in conjunction, should just be a one-click thing. And it just reduces APM, which again really is doing nothing for the method itself. And if APM really is a valuable thing for some players, you can always throw in darts and feathers if you really wanted to flex and you really wanted to squeeze in a little bit more XP per hour.
Yeah, I mean that's something I want to mention. Like you don't even necessarily need to click on something in your inventory to start an action cycle, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't I do I see your point about like how it's kind of a weird thing to be like starting to craft an item and then just interrupting that and just having that become like a part of skilling. But I kind of like these like weird quirks. I feel like that's kind of part of what makes this game have personality.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of like really weird things like that in our game. Like you can have essentially infinite prayer if you just turn it on and off again. Like should we be making that easier too and just make that somehow like a one click instead of two?
Well,
Um,
that couldn't be a one click because every click actually does mean something. One click is turning off, one click is turning on.
yeah, but to me every click means something when you're using it like the knife on the log. Like to me
Mm-hmm.
that's just how
I'm
you
just
craft
seeing
things.
I'm just seeing it as, can we have an item that starts a 3-tick action? So
Yeah.
it's not like I'm asking for, let's have an item that starts a 3-tick action and mines the rock for you. That would be like
Yeah.
turning on and off a prayer. This is a 1-to-1 input of one click equals one, you've started the action.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I could see something like that being introduced to the game. Like for example, RS3, you don't use the secondary on the unfinished potion. You just click the unfinished potion, and it will starts to make
Interesting.
them.
Interesting.
So that's personally how I would probably see it being introduced in the game. I know Gnome Cube has some extra quirks that have been brought up, such as potentially not like having the equivalent of making a stock if you do make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, personally, that's how I think it would be introduced. Like something like where maybe the swamp tar would probably end up with a left click make tar option. As much as I wouldn't necessarily like to see it, I'm just being realistic. I could potentially see it being introduced in the game that way.
Yeah, I would optimally hope for any sort of item that's a one-click, three-tick starter to enter into the game. That's just my biggest hope. And I mean, look at cut eat barb. I mean, when you don't have to knife log and you have a bunch of caviar in your inventory and you're maintaining that cycle with one click, maintaining it, that feels fucking good.
But how do you get the fish when you're doing cut eat barb? You're using the knife on the fish. Like
Yeah, but I'm saying like when you have a full inventory, once you've cut all that fish, by the way,
right.
that is a meaningful method to cut the fish because one, actually, this is the kind of separate tangent, but I actually would not be opposed to a left click cut option on those fish. So instead of having to use it, now that's a separate thing. We don't have to go down that road because this is a you could continually dumb down things and to the point, and I will fully concede that you can dumb down things enough to make a method unrecognizable and actually make it less fun. And I'm arguing that a Gnome Cube doesn't actually remove any of that fun, and limiting it to just this is actually a positive. It overall is a positive to the game, and it actually encourages more fun, more flow, and gets more players involved, and it prevents the dumbing down of skilling methods. And you would concede that, right? That we're continually seeing more and more dumbed down methods where they actively ignore any sort of skill expression and actively ignore any sort of rhythm. And that'll continue, by the way, as long as there's this massive fucking disparity between 3-tick 4G spam clicking, dropping repeatedly, having nobody ever want to touch the method. Any like 99% of Reddit wants nothing to do with that, and there's a good reason for it because it's fucking daunting.
But I don't think that those people that don't want anything to do with it are suddenly going to be interested in doing 3-tick skilling just because you remove that one click of using of selecting the knife in your inventory, which is arguably the easiest part of the method.
No, I would actually I would argue against that. And if we went back to the other argument as well of getting that disintegration spell, the conjunction of both a one-click starter and not having to drop stuff and just having to click a spell once your inventory fills up, people would be all over that method. Like a lot. Now, I'm not saying everybody. There's a lot of people that just have really shitty hardware, crappy mouses. They're running a fucking 60 hertz monitor. It's dog shit, and they're never gonna touch it because they can't. But
I mean, I don't know. I honestly I still see it being pretty challenging. Like switching to the other tab and then switching back. I mean, maybe people won't do it without missing ticks. Like I imagine maybe some people who are just getting involved might be mining whole inventories at a time and then doing the spell or something, similar to how people that are learning the method will sometimes let their inventory fill up and then focus on dropping. Which is actually a good strategy, by the way, for people that do want to get started doing tick granite. But I don't know. I can't see these things necessarily being game changers. Like I absolutely could be wrong, but I think considering I am biased because I am somebody who did learn these methods myself, and I feel like there is a big difference between people who are willing to do high APM stuff and people who just kind of want to AFK stars. It's hard for me to imagine people being so close to wanting to do tick manipulation, but having that be the one thing that's being the barrier of entry. I think like bringing the spell, that's a whole other argument. I'm just kind of just talking about the Gnome Cube here.
Well, but let me also just throw in. So I browse Reddit quite often, and I have actually seen a significant amount of posts. In fact, I might actually do this for the argument's sake. There have been significant amount of posts that come out and say, hey, I just learned how to 3-tick fish. I like this. This is actually kind of fun. I just learned how to 3-tick catch chins. This is actually kind of nice. This isn't the worst thing ever. People really just don't want to learn things in this game. They want to play RuneScape to relax and enjoy themselves. And it's actually surprising how many quote unquote casuals you will see that actually finally take their first step into a very basic sort of tick manipulation method. Two tick teaks is another one of those Reddit posts I've seen where it's like, hey, I just learned how to two tick teaks. This is fun as fuck. This is nice
Yeah.
because it's actually chill, it's rhythmic, and you're not having to just absolutely annihilate your fucking wrists. You just don't. It's just good rhythm. And instead of AFKing trees, which people will just do because they're like, ugh, I don't even know how to set up the bunnies to get this whole thing rolling. I don't know how to tick manipulate. I don't understand timing, so I'm just never going to do it. And now I'm going to be one of those casuals on Reddit that's just give us more star mining because I'm never going to fucking learn anything.
Right.
It's just lowering that disparity of just super cracked APM and reducing it to a reasonable level, I think is just going to be overall a benefit. And I'm not claiming that everybody's going to jump on board into tick manipulation, but there are a lot of people that actually would want to get involved. And also just one more point before I let you jump in is
Yep.
so much of PVM embraces skilling. PVM, like that, the highest level forms of PVM are just like, if you really want to have fun in a boss, I'm thinking of like Araxor, for example, the new Slayer boss. There are ways to manipulate the boss that are very rhythmic, and it's just fun. And you don't have to knife log before running underneath the boss or anything. It's just a click. Just click underneath. Everything's very smooth. And I think knife logging in general, and even in that little spiel I just said, like, ultimately, knife log or 3-tick actions in general, such as a Gnome Cube, aren't even actually essential. It's really just focusing on rhythm. And I think there is something to be said about, having some sort of like Gnome Cube or knife log method. There is some beauty in those really, in those kind of like old school methods that I think need to be maintained still. But we are not seeing rhythmic methods being introduced into this game. And I think there's a big reason why, because a lot of the devs just see the average player base as like, give us more star mining, because it's either star mining or it's either break my wrist. And I'm choosing the star mining method. So we just have to lower that. We have to like level the playing field, I feel like. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I do want to say it does make me really happy when you mentioned those people that you talked about, like on Reddit, that say like, how they tried tick manipulation for the first time, and they're happy with the results and how much fun it can actually be.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that. As a player who's in that position myself, like it's a really good feeling to try doing something that that's challenging and something that you might not think that you're capable of doing long term, and in still being able to find enjoyment in it. I don't necessarily think that just has to do with rhythm, because I think rhythm could still be introduced without using any item in your inventory to start a 3-tick action cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Like imagine doing 3-tick granite just by clicking the rocks. I think personally that would be way too easy, and I think a lot of people would agree with me that that would probably be considered overpowered.
Yeah, it would actually it would remove an element of fun, actually, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah.
And again, like these are we just have to have like an actual like rational argument of like what is actually going to be fun. Would that be, I don't know. It's just like you just have to like go like case by case basis. I mean, look at 1.5 tick ticks. Have you done much of that at all?
I have, yeah. I think it's an excellent method, even if it was an accident, a little happy accident by Jagex.
It's such a cool method, but the dropping of logs repeatedly is not really the thing that's making this fun. So I what I would love to see, even if it wasn't 1.5 tick teaks, a tree cutting method where I would just want to see this like programmed into like this is one of the reasons I'm really excited for like Project Xanaris. It's just to fucking show something off, or you can just plug it in yourself to like just design something. I would love to see almost like a 1.5 tick teaks where that eastern tree is 1 tick closer, so you could actually do the back and forth between both sides. That would be amazing. So just design 3 trees. You're still having that strategy of kind of figuring out when the tree's about to respawn. I love that it's really static. That's beautiful.
It's not static though. It depends on if you get a double roll. Like if you get double log drop, then the tree actually respawns, I think like 1 tick later.
Really?
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't actually
super
know
weird.
that.
I've looked into
Okay, so
making a
that would make
plugin for
sense though.
this,
So
and yeah, it's just a nightmare to program because sometimes the rations would proc or like not proc, and you'd still get. I don't know. I just remember it being a huge nightmare to deal with.
okay, but it is just a one tick disparity. Everything else is
Yeah,
static.
yeah.
But if you do get the double roll, it would be like it'd be like using a thrall and hitting a monster at the same time, and it dies a tick sooner, something like that.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't know that, but ultimately, if you're going back and forth between the two most western, like the middle and the western tree,
Yep.
back and forth, you know the pattern of, okay, now I'm going to go to the middle tree, go one over, go another one over, go back, and then you'll know the trees respawn by that time. It's just like you kind of get that pattern. I love the static nature of that. There might
Yep.
be some caveat that I didn't realize that's actually very interesting. But it's cool having that because it's more comprehensive. It's more complicated than just 3-tick-4G where it's a set pattern. But man, if you had a method where there wasn't the obnoxious dropping of logs repeatedly and there wasn't just so much clicking, it would be so much better.
There is a method like if you're making planks on an Iron Man, you typically aren't going to drop those valuable teak logs. You're gonna teleport to your
It's
player
true.
in
It's true.
house.
I actually like that method because you get
I
that
like that method a
chillness.
lot too.
Yeah, you get the
But
chillness
to
of
me,
it. Yeah.
yeah. But to me, like the dropping, while
Mhm.
it might not be considered part of the fun factor, I do think it really does make the method a lot more challenging than it
It does.
otherwise
It
would
makes it more challenging. There is more skill expression because it's just difficulty. I mean, you could just add on any amount of clicks you'd want to any method, and it would be more challenging. And you'd have
Yeah.
a lot more respect for anybody that's gonna fucking click 5 ticks in this one-click window and just or one-tick window. And like you can add as many clicks and you can add as many challenges as you want, but there is a point, and we can all agree that there is some sort of perfect middle ground that's like, okay, this feels good. It's not gonna break my wrist over 3 hours of doing it. And I don't know. I just think like the dropping of stuff and reducing unnecessary clicks is just a really healthy way to
Well,
go about stuff.
yeah, but I do think that 1.5 tick teaks is kind of that perfect middle ground because I do feel like it's challenging, but
Hmm.
at the same time, it's still worth doing over 2 tick. And I like the fact that woodcutting actually has those other options. Like if you do find the dropping to be too difficult, which a lot of people do with 1.5 tick,
Hmm.
you could always just drop logs to auto retaliate when you're doing two tick. Like the method's pretty chill in comparison, and it's not like that much worse.
Hmm.
So I don't necessarily think that like 1.5 tick teaks needs like to be changed in any way. I think it actually is pretty balanced where it
Yeah.
is right now.
No, that's a fair point. I think Gnome Cube would help it out just tiny little bit.
It would make it considerably easier in my opinion. But
Yeah, that would be
you know,
that would I would just love to just test a method where you're just using a one-click cycle start, one-click cycle starter, just seeing how that actually feels. And I'd love for other players that are against it to see how it feels. And my this is a completely separate topic. It's mainly
yeah.
sort of catered toward Ironman and mains as well, I guess technically. But one of the things I'd love to see is like the Prif 2-tick teaks, like how you basically just need to drop the logs because it's just not going to be worth your time trying to go bank them or trying to plank them and reset up the bunny. It's just too much fucking effort.
Yeah.
One of the things I would love to see is like right to the east of those two teak trees, there's like a little stash unit deposit box that you could build with a high construction level, and you could actually just build a deposit box right there. So you could chop your teaks, doing the 2-tick teaks, and then every time your inventory fills up, like literally just use the logs on that deposit box and actually like profit doing that method instead of just constantly dropping. Again, that would be a crazy buff to the method, but like that would be so cool. I just think like not losing the bunny aggro, banking resources, and having a method like that just sounds
Yeah.
great. I don't know.
I think like some people. I mean, I didn't play League, so I don't really have much of an example to go off of. But I do think that some people got a taste of that with some of the League's things. Like I think you could like note items in
Yeah.
inventory and things like that. Maybe people enjoyed that. I do think that like a basket that close would probably have a considerable effect on the Iron Man skilling meta.
Oh
Um,
yeah, it would.
so that's my main concern. Like, I don't really mind if people want to make methods more accessible in that way.
Hmm.
If it is gonna be a slight nerf to your XP rates having to do that. But I think it would sounds absolutely like it would be the new meta for Iron Man to do that. I think.
Yeah,
Because I still think two tick is even still very viable. Like, I was watching Fee Poppy do it, where he had like an alt on a PvP roll darting him, and do a
yeah,
two
yeah.
tick, the Ape Atoll spot, and that was even still worth doing. So, yeah,
That's a really interesting method with the whole like secondaries pouch and the plank sack and the
yeah,
like everything else going. That's
yeah. He was
it's
even
awesome.
cutting fish on the like
I
leading up, like
know.
running there. So yeah, he's up to some crazy stuff.
Actual beast. No, I love those kinds of methods.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they could even to sort of balance it out. They could make it so that hot spot, and this is actually something that wouldn't just be there. I've even thought of having a hot spot where you could build a deposit box at like the gold horseshoe mine out in Brimhaven. Like
yeah, I wouldn't mind that actually.
there's like these nice spots that you'll never use because they're just completely inefficient. There's other way better ways, and if you added some sort of, you could even make it so building a deposit box, costs one of those fucking magic stones or a multiple of them. Make this thing cost like legitimate like 5 mil to build. So it really is this is kind of pricey, but this is going to pay off in the long term. And it's one of those things where you like kind of consider it. You're like, is this one of the deposit boxes I want to build? And it could maybe even be like a spirit tree thing where you can only build certain at a time until you're 99 construction. Then you can just build them all. And I don't know. I just think there's some really cool areas where having a deposit box nearby would actually be a very valuable asset.
Yeah, it reminds me of the I don't know if anyone's actually used this, but it used to be kind of a thing back in the day. Do you remember that, like, that the mine cart or whatever used to be able to deposit coal near Sears Village?
Yeah,
Near that?
yeah, the coal trucks,
like,
the coal
yeah,
trucks.
yeah, the coal trucks. Yeah, like something like that could thematically, I think, fit into the game.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if the gold spawn rates, has that been adjusted, or are those still insanely?
They're still so bad. They need to touch.
Okay, so I mean, it would still probably. I'm not sure if it would be
That's a
viable,
separate
even if they
discussion.
had
That
that.
that needs
Yeah,
to
yeah,
all of that
yeah.
stuff needs to be adjusted.
I would not mind if they changed that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it is kind of like, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Shopscape in general. Just like
Mhm.
how much Iron Man depends on shops, like especially the blast furnace shop where you just buy gold and just deposit it right away. Like, I think it's a cool method and it's pretty fun to do. But I wouldn't mind if it was actually viable to gather the resources yourself and
Yeah.
gain some mining XP out of it. Like, I'm totally open to that.
Yeah, I like when skills kind of complement each other. And
Yeah.
like, just imagine, granite is a method where you can mine it and you get granite dust for it. So that's directly buffing your potential PVM with a cannon or Slayer with a cannon. Then you also have the sandstone method to boost your crafting. You have gem mining and all of these are very balanced. You get gems if you want to make jewelry and stuff. And then let's just say that gold horseshoe mine comes out and you have a bank deposit box right there. And they've actually adjusted the gold mining rate. So now you can get, let's just say 110K mining XP an hour here, 3 ticking gold. You could bank that, use it for smithing. So you just have a bunch of variety that's relatively good. It's all kind of rhythmic. But depending on your goals and depending on what skills you need to train, like there's just different variations. And oh my God, like I would just kill for that. Especially silver. First of all, silversmithing gauntlets need to be a thing, but they're silver ores need to be adjusted as well. All those rocks need to be a mithril, addy, rune. Nobody's mining that shit. It's too
Oh,
garbage.
bots are, I think.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Well, Runite they are. Nobody's mining
Yeah.
mithril and addy. Nobody.
No,
It's
no,
not
no, no.
even the
Yeah, you're
bots.
right about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, I don't know. I look forward to a day where like some of these things are just rebalanced, and I think it will come. It's just there's so much in this game, and I don't know. I want skilling to succeed. I think you made a point earlier on that like you just can't make skilling very profitable because there's bots, but there's bots doing everything now. There's bots doing perfect tobs.
Yeah, at this point it's gone a bit insane. But yeah, like I do miss back when skilling actually used to be used for gathering resources. I think like the beginning of the downfall of that was probably the introduction of Zulrah. Just dumping a ton of skilling resources into the game. Um, like I remember when I was a kid, people used to pick flax for money. I remember
Yeah.
I used to mine like coal for money. Like maybe people won't do that today just because like we know that there's better options, but like I kind of miss how that used to actually be an element in the game.
Yeah. Yep. No, I
And
do too. I do too.
yeah, speaking of PVM as well, I kind of wanted just to touch on briefly the whole element of skilling being involved in PVM. I kind of like I don't know how you feel about stuff like raids being dependent on like your mining level and stuff like that, but to me
Mhm.
like I feel like that kind of forces a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't be interested in skilling to feel like they have
Yeah.
to do the content that they want to do. And I kind of feel like that's kind of one of the big reasons why we end up getting these methods like star mining and stuff like that. I just think that we'd kind of be better off without that stuff. Like I want people who are going to be going for max and stuff to actually want to do it for the achievement, not necessarily just because they have this like kind of uh,
It's like a means
all-in-one
to an end.
toolkit on your cape. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I just think I wish we never got skilling cape perks. Like to me, that was um, one of the worst updates that we've gotten, just because like the reasons that I mentioned before, and
Mhm.
also some of the perks are just weird. Like some of the perks are actually just a straight up nerf, which doesn't even make any sense. Like the woodcutting cape giving you extra nests, like you don't even get XP rolls when you get a nest. It's like you're literally nerfing your rates if you're wearing a max cape and you're doing T. So like I
That
don't
is
know. It's
so
just
funny. Uh, yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's a bit more complicated than just the black and white. Like this would be bad and this would be good because there are payoffs. There's some or not payoff trade offs of allowing some benefits to be had. It just feels kind of good in a simplistic way without seeing the unforeseen consequences. We see that with a max keep. Like people skilling has, in some ways it's appropriate, but like skilling has gotten easier, and there's just some like you know methods that wouldn't have been introduced had it not been for the Maxscape. I mean, Maxscape is a sought after thing now, and I don't know exactly how I feel. I'd have to have like a full like comprehensive like pros and cons list of what the Maxscape perks have really done to the game because I would go like I would say yes with PVM stuff. There shouldn't be some like weird skilling stuff that you need to get involved with just a PVM. However, Raids 1 came out as sort of a dungeoneering thing. I mean, you would get a
yeah.
dragon harpoon from the minigame. Like the Cox was actually made as sort of like you're going to be skilling in this thing. It wasn't actually just designed as just PVM. Tob was designed as just PVM. And so, I can't really blame the devs for having introduced some sort of elements of skilling in there. Akka puzzle, I'm sorry, that needs to go. That's just so ridiculous. You can still have the pickaxe, that's fine, but it should just be, it should almost like just be dependent on your pickaxe. So as long as
Yeah.
you've hit 61 mining or 60 mining or whatever it is to use the dragon pickaxe, that should be like the max that should even matter. I don't
That
think your
sounds
level
fair.
should.
Or they could even just cap the level. It doesn't. I don't think things have to scale to like 99 in these
Yeah,
cases.
that's yeah. So I'm with you there. I think there's always negative consequences toward adding perks to these achievements. I don't know if you heard my ramble on why I don't log into Sae Bae anymore because of CAs.
Yeah, yeah. Although I am a little bit confused about that,
Mhm.
about how like aren't you going to just get interested in doing saves on your new Iron Man? Like,
No, I
and
mean,
and it, and if not, why couldn't you just ignore them on your main, just like you're doing with your new account?
well, and again, like that video didn't fully capture everything. It's not like that is the sole reason I don't log into Sae Bae. There's other reasons why I've burnt out of Sae Bae, but
Okay.
CAs are the reason I'm stressed out to log into Sae Bae. Like it's actually an
Yeah,
element of stress. It's my own problem, but other people deal with it as well. And I wanted to make it just basically a discussion about what we could potentially do with CAs in the future. I just hate having rewards you've earned be stripped away from you. It sucks. It's not a good feeling. I understand there's no perfect solution to it. And in fact, the solution we have is the cleanest. I'll fully admit that. But just psychologically, it's just not fun having achieved something and having it repeatedly taken away from you multiple times a year.
Yeah, I totally I understand where you're coming from, and like I think people already don't even like losing their quest cape, and that's just like such a lesser version of the CA problem.
Yeah.
Like, so like I do see like how it could feel bad and stuff, and honestly, like I don't really have a good answer for it or a good solution to that problem. Yeah, I just think it might just be like just one of those things that just kind of sucks about the game, and I don't know, it's tricky.
Yeah, no, I think the last cast I was talking, I think we were kind of talking about a solution where there's like the Zuck helm, which is always just going to be, what were we saying? It was something like there's like a Zuck helm and then there's a trimmed Zuck helm. And the Zuck helm would be you just hit a certain threshold, so however many tasks it is, and it doesn't include any of the team tasks, so it really is just a solo endeavor. You can get your Zuck helm proving you're a gamer, you've done all the solo tasks. And then the trimmed version wouldn't include any more perks, but it would include a trimmed sort of Zuck helm, either glowing eyes or something, and that includes all the team stuff. Because there's another argument, I didn't even bring this up because I haven't really thought about it, but there's a lot of people that hate the team aspect, that hate that somebody else can fuck your CA up when you do it perfectly and somebody else fucks up. Like, that is stupid.
Yeah, I could see that as well. But I don't know how much the trimmed, like I like the idea, but I think the people that are going to be upset about losing their Zuck helm are also going to be upset about losing their trimmed Zuck helm in the same way. I think that's the main issue.
Yeah. So the way we were kind of thinking about it is like, for the giga sweats, that because there were some people in my comments that really don't have a problem with it. They are Zuck helm owners and they love logging in and having more CAs, and that's just, so those are the gamers that are just really built for maintaining this. And I was just thinking, how cool would it be if easy, medium, hard, elite, master, grandmaster were all perfectly set in stone. This is how many achievements you need to do. It's just or not even just that, but it's just like you just achieve it once and you've obtained it forever, and that's it. Once you do it, you're done. You have everything. You can wear your Zuck helm till the end of time if you got it. But then there is an additional threshold where you can get the trimmed version. That's doing everything, and that's no additional perks, and you just get some glowing eyes on your helmet. And so you'll lose the glowing eyes every time there's more stuff coming out, but as long as you've once obtained that Zuck helm, whatever the threshold is of that, you can't lose it anymore. And, it's not a perfect system, of course, but it was something else me and the guest were kind of agreeing on. And so it's just tough. And again, the system we have is whatever. And, you were asking me, like, aren't you just going to go for Zuck helm on this? This account that I'm playing right now is really just about just fun. It's just like, whatever I want to do, I'm going to do. I'm not worrying about efficiency. I'm not worrying about getting to a certain point as fast as I can. I'm not worrying about Zuck helm. I'm not worrying about all that. If I do some CAs, that's whatever. But CAs have never been something I wanted to do. Even on Sae Bae.
Yeah.
Like, I think I got Zuck helm like 2 months after release. That was just a fucking ball of stress. I mean, it's just truly just... it was a cool sense of accomplishment. Don't get me wrong. I felt very proud of my achievement, but then it got taken away from me, and then it got taken away from me again. Then it got taken away from me again. I'm like, okay, now I'm obtaining this. Yeah.
The thing that I don't understand is like, why couldn't you apply the same mentality that you have for your account to just your main?
That's a good question. So again, it doesn't all come down to CAs because even on Sae Bae, like if I just reobtain my Zuck helm, yeah, that'd feel good, but there's other elements of Sae Bae that just aren't as fun, and part of it is my content creation element of it, where I can't just log in and stream me fishing on Sae Bae, because the whole fucking chat is going to be like, why are you fishing? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And I'm like, I don't know. I just want to. It's like, well, what are you doing? Are you going for 200 mil? No, I just wanted to fish today. And then the whole chat is just, it's just going to be like additional stress of like, I actually wanted to fish today, but I'm going to resist it to do something I think the audience is going to enjoy. And Squat Cam was like a full fresh slate of that. Like, okay, there is actually zero pressure to this account. Nobody knows what I'm doing. I'm not setting any crazy goals that I have to do. Everything is just soft clay. I can kind of figure out what I really want to do. And the other element of it is I'm a player that really doesn't get quite as much dopamine as I would like from post 99 XP. I'm just not built that way.
Yeah, I don't think I get any personally. That's not really why really? I do it. I don't even care about like the 200 mils.
Oh
like,
wow!
Yeah, it's just like on to the next one. It's just I don't know. I enjoy skilling in general. It's not really about
that's me. Like I actually enjoyed skilling on Sae Bae, but streaming it was just like I don't know what it is. I mean, you lose viewers. That's a guarantee. That's a given. You're gonna lose viewers. And then on top of that, you're just getting questioned the whole time. Like, why aren't you going for your 2K CM cape? Why aren't you doing that? Like, because I don't want to? That sounds like
Are people not, like, asking questions about goals regarding your new account, though?
They do, but the best part about making a new account is everything's open. And on top of that, this is another element, is, like, on Sae Bae, if I wanted to go, let's just say kill Zilliana, it's just pray mage and use max gear and T-bow, and just the whole thing's brain dead. On an account and every item I get means nothing because I've already obtained it all. So there's no dopamine hits besides the potential pet in the future. On this account, it's go in there with really shitty gear, which again, you could argue, you could just do that on Sae Bae. Just rock in with some shitty gear. Everyone's going to question me. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you using a rune crossbow on Sae Bae? Like, hello?
Yeah.
But there's more fun to a little account that you're building up and going and getting new items, and you're having to do these really tough, challenging ways of prayer flicking, or else you're going to die there. And everything's just different and fresh, I feel like, and you don't get that with a maxed account anymore.
I could definitely see that, but I'd also like to ask, why didn't you try a different type of Iron Man mode? Like, why not make like an ultimate or like a hardcore or something like that?
Oh, that's another great question. So hardcore sucks because the whole time it's just you're just preparing to die. I mean, it's just, and again, the stream element of it is if you're playing too safe, everyone calls you a safer and a pussy. And then if you're playing too recklessly, you're like, what are you doing? Where's your teleport crystal? Like, you're not tier 3 prepping at CG. What are you doing? Like, you're risking everything. And so you have to play this tightrope of just, okay, I'm appealing to everybody. I'm not playing recklessly. I'm eating up when I need to. I'm doing good tellies. I'm using my fucking teleport crystal. Like, oh my god, it's horrible. It's a horrible time. And then UIM just sucks because the amount of weird death piling and the amount of, if you really wanted to play like macro efficiently, you have to like grind out skills all the way so you're not like trolling yourself with.
Yeah, but I thought you said you weren't playing for efficiency on this new account.
Okay, but UIM, like you could probably agree with me. UIM, that just sounds. You don't have a bank. Like, I'm sorry.
I agree.
Like, that is horrible.
I agree. It sounds bad, but I bet you if you actually got into it, it would be something that would just become like second nature to you. And like, it would just. I think it's probably a lot less intimidating than it looks from the outside. But I don't know. I really have no idea. I've never tried the game mode. I think the main reason why I didn't want to make a UIM is just because I do care a lot about like efficiency and stuff, and I feel like there might be a lot of potentially getting locked into doing certain things just because of the amount of stuff you'd have to do if you wanted to do something else. Like, your inventory is already set up for this particular activity, and I like having the freedom to kind of skill hop and do whatever I feel like in that particular time. So that's why I didn't get into it.
Yeah, I think I would almost subconsciously lock into what you're saying. It's just like, okay, I'm already on this. Let's just continue it. Let's just go to 99 or whatever. And then that wouldn't even be something I'd want to do, but I'd feel obligated because it's just like, this is going to be so much worse if I do it later. I'm going to have so much like less inventory spots.
Yeah.
And yeah, UIM really just doesn't appeal to me just because of how much. I mean, I was talking to UIM Loki again a few weeks ago, and like, even he, a lover of the UIM game mode, is like, yeah, it's pretty obnoxious when you or trying to, you wipe at Tob or something, and then you got to spend the next 18 minutes just re-obtain. It's like, Jesus, 18 minutes of just like resetting. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And that's at the max cape point where you have all the stuff you need. Like, imagine not. Like, ugh.
True, true. But on the flip side, I do feel like a lot of the UIM stuff, I feel like there might be potential. I don't know like how solved the game mode is at this point, but I feel like there's always kind of potential for new things to be discovered. Like if anything, that game mode would be one of them. Especially if you're playing like maybe a limited build or something like that. I think there's probably a lot that you would have to innovate, and I think that could be potentially really fun. So maybe someday
yeah.
I'd be interested in doing that.
Yeah. No, I think I think there's something nice about having an unexplored game mode that I've never done. For the far future, if I really was just desperate of trying something really fresh I've never experienced, it's kind of nice having that in the back pocket.
True. Yeah. I mean, even like with my build as a peer, there's a lot of stuff that I'm gonna have to figure out.
Yeah,
Regarding
one
Slayer
too as well. That's
yeah,
wild.
yeah, one prayer. I can't even barrage task. I'm gonna have to chin them, so
God
that's gonna be
damn.
really interesting. And like using alts to like hold aggro and lure D's for stacking. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm actually really looking forward to that grind. Although I am planning on doing a lot of boss tasks, just because like I don't want to, potentially be 200 mil Slayer and have to go back and do post 200 mil XP just to get like Serpet or things like that. So I'm planning on doing a lot of that on the way. So it'll probably be pretty slow.
Okay, let's talk about comp cape just briefly. Because we kind of mentioned the problem with max cape perks, the problem with perks and anything. What are your thoughts on a comp cape?
I think it's about time, personally. Like I feel like I do think that they're probably prepping for it with that's why I imagine we're getting some of these collection log updates, which I'm also a really big fan of. Like I love the idea of having a collection log high scores. I hope it's not as botched as the boss high scores was. But yeah, like I just think it would be great for the game. I do think there's a lot of discussion to have in regards of like how exactly we go about introducing, like what should be involved in the comp cape. I know RS3 did a really bad job with their Castle Wars requirements, I believe, back in the day. They just had like some absolutely ridiculous time sinks that I don't really think are like relevant. But yeah, I think it's something good to talk about, and I'm just a big fan of in general. I think the game's been out for long enough to where we should probably be talking about having it introduced.
And are you pro perks for it or purely cosmetic?
I haven't actually heard any discussions about perks. I mean, I generally don't really like perks for things like that. I don't even think we needed perks for the combat achievements. Like people would have just done it for the for the aesthetics,
itself. Yeah, yeah.
And I also think it would probably help with the stress element that you're talking about. Like
100%.
we really didn't need the perks. So yeah, I'm just gonna flat out say, please no perks for the comp cape.
Okay, good. I appreciate that. No, I mean that's exactly. I mean, I think I'm more anti comp cape as much as it looks fucking sexy. It looks so good. Be such a cool thing to have. The thing I'm worried about with a comp cape is that if it has any tie to new updates, which it will, there is this subconscious resentment that players have where you have a low level boss come out. Oh, well, don't have my comp cape, so how do I get it? Oh, I got to deal with this garbage that I'm already way past. I'm just over leveled for it, but time to grind it, and then time to bitch and moan on Twitter that fucking Jagex keeps coming out with low level updates, and I have to do them to get my comp cape back.
I don't know. I think people just wouldn't care as much if it wasn't like impactful with the perks or whatever. And I don't know. Maybe it's actually like part of that on the opposite argument is like maybe it could actually be good for like player engagement. Like maybe some people are going to be logging in that they otherwise wouldn't be just to get some of these things done, and maybe they'll stick around for a bit longer. Who knows? Like could have some positives.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some pros. I think the resentment though that kind of happens with updates like this, it's low key. It's not really like actively talked about, but there's people that just start despising the game. I mean, like they'll log in, clearly they're logging in, but man, it's like they're like being despirited slowly but surely of just toward the game, and they're just, they just become burnt out because of just how many random things that they need to do that they don't actually want to do.
Yeah, like it
Yeah.
just feels bad because you feel like something's being taken away from you and you had like had nothing to do with you, right? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like something's being added to the game. It feels like something's being removed from the
Exactly.
account. So
And that's
yeah.
why I loved, I don't know if you heard my argument on the collection log wieldable book. I like the wieldable book that upgrades every 100.
Yeah,
So
I'm totally open to that. I thought they were talking about a staff. I'm kind of like behind usually when it comes to new updates and discussions like that. I'm usually the kind of player that will like sit back and wait for people to figure everything out, and then
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll jump in and do it. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a subtle enough thing to add, like a book. There's definitely room for that. I think equipable one at least.
Yeah, the staff with the floating book is also, that could also be a thing. I think just the book alone is what I personally just find is the most appropriate.
Yeah, I think I like that better too, and thematically, I think it makes more sense.
Yeah, and the non-ranking of it, I know thematically with leagues it makes sense to have a bronze book up to dragon or whatever, but the fact that those would always change the more collection logs you come out with just is so weird. And in my opinion, the Roman numerals from I for 100 all the way up to like right now we have 1500 collection logs having the XV and then continuing on upward. So there really is no cap to how many of these upgrades you could get. But the only perk, you could add perks to this, but you would get all the perks just at even 100. So you're not feeling like you need to get to the next thing to get the perks. It's like, no, the collection log, this is a really old suggestion I had of like, how God pages nowadays from Clue Scrolls have no use. I was just thinking like,
Yeah.
how cool would it be if those could just be thrown into the collection log book as the teleport charges to somewhere,
Okay.
or even a few
I
different
still
spots.
think I'd rather have no perks, to be fair, but
Yeah. Well,
uh,
this sort of perk system is not. It's never being taken away from you, and it's from the very get go. As soon as you have 100 logs, which takes a fucking not even a week of game time,
yeah.
you're locked and loaded, and you're good, and that's just it. And it doesn't need to
Yeah,
have perks, of course, but
it could work. Do you think like is in your vision, would you imagine like the book changing colors with each 100 unlock, do you think,
yeah,
or is
yeah,
it
it could
just
it could
okay?
change to any color. They could add any thematic, but it would just have a Roman numeral just to signify what it is, and it would continue to go up. And a decade from now, when we're at 2,000 collection logs or whatever, like it would have the XX. That'd be pretty fucking dope.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty good content for like when once we pass that threshold with some new content, seeing like who's the first person to get the new book or whatever. I think
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
And that I'm a huge fan of collection log high scores, like you mentioned. That would be great.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. Like I think I personally would be more interested in collection log if it was like an actual official thing and not done on like a third party site. Which I mean is kind of weird coming from somebody who plays a lot for EHP, which is on a third party site. But for some reason I feel like it's different. Like you know, having it be submitted, kind of a weird way through like light plugins and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I'd prefer it if you could just look somebody up and see
totally.
kind of an idea of what they've done on their account. Even as somebody who doesn't necessarily have a lot of collection log experience, like it's something I'm definitely interested in potentially for the future. I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but someday I'll get into it for sure.
Okay. Predator versus prey relationship in the wilderness. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So as somebody who is basically never the predator, I am almost I think I am basically always the prey. I feel like I'm like one of the few people who actually enjoys that kind of mechanic. Like I'm not like just like a masochist or anything. Like I just love like don't get me wrong. I recently I went for rank 1 Scorpia not too long ago, and
Mhm.
like the amount of times that I died on all four of my alts, like trust me, it's not fun, but it makes it more challenging, and it made me have to change my mentality and adapt to it, and eventually it just kind of became like part of the boss mechanics. Like I would just die like uncontrollably on like most of my accounts, and you just kind of have to deal with that. Like to me, it didn't necessarily make the game less fun, it just made it more challenging. And I really like those kind of that kind of relationship where you do have to deal with other players potentially PKing you, because I've seen what the flip side looks like, and it is horrible. Like if the people who don't want to be PK'd in the wilderness, just go play RS3. Like they have opt-in PvP over there, and you'll see just how much fun it is. It's not like it's funny because they have all these like different warnings and stuff like that. It's like, oh, even the wikis is like, don't bring valuable items into the wilderness. There's all these checks and warnings, but like when you actually go in there, you realize there's literally zero risk because you just haven't opted into PvP, and it's completely dead. It just feels like this entire vast area of the game, and it just does not feel fun or exciting or dangerous at all. It's literally just like a more boring version of the overworld.
Yeah. No, I would agree to some extent. Seriously, like when I've been in the wilderness, I'm having a great time. It's more exciting. It's more thrilling. Streaming it sucks balls, but
yeah, I wouldn't stream.
Streaming is not a fun time, but just the average experience of a player going out there, and you're kind of trying to evade PKers. That can be kind of fun. The unfun comes from one being an Iron Man. So all the odds are stacked against you, and it's a completely asymmetrical fight where there's no incentive for you to fight back, and you potentially risking items on an Iron Man you're not talking about a GE value thing where you just go to the GE and buy it back. You're talking about, let's just say you were risking Dragon Claws. Now you're looking at several hundred hours of Cox to re-obtain something in case you get skulled. Again, I love the skull prevention. Fucking beautiful update.
Yeah.
And so they've made some good things. They've made some good changes, but and this is just fundamentally flawed with the Iron Man mode. The fact that they can't benefit from other players. So it's just completely skewed. I will fully concede. I've conceded this for many years that Iron Man ruined Wilderness to some extent. It's made it so it's not as engaging. There's not as much engagement going on. It's just like you're fighting a pinata, and it's just kind of how it is. I've brought up solutions. I won't do it here just because it's a lot to explain, but it's kind of a complicated system. But I like it when things are balanced more. When things get way too skewed. For example, the Wilderness Slayer cave is one of those really imbalanced caves where not only is the entire cave multi, but the exits lead to multi. So it's just like if you see a 4-man team and you're above the 30 wildy or you get teleblocked, you're just dead. Like there's no real way for you to get out, and the PKers fucking love that. They free kill, and it's just completely imbalanced. And so the way you avoid it is turn on these plugins. I will see bots in there running in the cave. I see a red name. 1 tick later, but logged out. They have these.
That is a problem.
So there's these plugins that bots are using, and even real players are using, where they insta log out. That's not fucking fun. Who wants to be the PKer where now the defense is log out, so there's no interaction, there's no engagement? Like that. Right. That's what we've caused by this insane asymmetrical fight where it's like every fucking odd is stacked against you. That's so imbalanced. And I've brought up ideas in the past of, potential unfreeze potions for multi specifically. So you'd have, so you do have some potential way to escape if you bring some unfreeze potions. That could become a thing. So if you get barrage and get frozen, the PKers don't actually know if you're carrying these things. So maybe they all switch into the range gear or melee gear and they're running up toward you. But guess what? You just unfroze and you're trying to escape again. They freeze you again. You can drink it again. Only available in multi because that's when all the asymmetry is happening. In a 1v1 singles fight, that's not the case. You actually could fight back, and doing DPS is defensive in a way. But there's just so many roads to go down to fix these imbalances. I would even say this is a really interesting idea. I'm not fully advocating for this, but imagine a system where like you going out in the wilderness, you only lose what you got. So you go out in the wilderness, you bring what you want, and if you're fighting somebody that's PVMing, if you kill them, you only get what their loot was and maybe I don't know, additional risk of them, having deposit like 500K to even enter the wilderness, or 100K or whatever. Again, this is just a thought experiment. It's somebody spitballing. I kind of enjoyed the brainstorming of those kinds of systems, because apparently a lot of other PvP games, you run out in the wilderness, you carry whatever you want, but you're only losing what you actually gained out in the wilderness, not all the shit on your back, which I feel like many PKers would find that fundamentally against the spirit of the wilderness, which is fair. And I'll concede that to some extent. It's brainstorming stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting idea to bring up. I don't really know how well it would work for bosses that don't necessarily, like, for if there was to be a boss that would have, let's say, a big drop. Obviously people are just going to insta-tele as soon as, or just get out of there as fast as they can once they get that drop. Like I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that you don't have options. I don't know about the Slayer case example that you gave. Like, are myth seeds just like disabled in there or something?
No. There are myth seeds are available, but the problem is like when you're in the wilderness Slayer cave, like you're a one-man show trying to do your Slayer task. You don't have any anti-PK gear, so
right.
The teams that pull up in there, the 4-man team or the scout that finds you, teleblocks you, and then their whole team logs in.
Probably not. Yeah. But I have seen. I know. Glads has done a lot of Slayer in those caves, and I've seen him manage to slip out quite a few times. I don't know if the PKers are just really bad, or if he's just not getting hit by teams or something. But it does seem like you do have some agency. Like there are some options. I think. Obviously, a team, you'd probably just get crushed, just like I did almost every time at Scorpia. But I mean, there's still things that you can do. Like when I was doing Scorpia, for example, I figured out you could have your alt tank the mini Scorpions, and then you're basically just out of combat on not just my pure, but I also was able to get out of combat on 2 of my other alts as well. So it opens up more options. I know logout strats aren't really that great, but like it's not just like an insta death. There is still some counterplay to it. You could even have like an alt outside scouting the caves or something like that. But I do agree that there are huge problems with PvP in this game, especially seeing some of the rev bots, what they've been able to do, just one-ticking like 12 ways and just like doing insane shit. Like they'll like one-tick a 12-way switch into like freezing you and just like insta escaping. Yeah. It's just like it actually does look like there's no counterplay in those examples, and I do wish that Jagex could potentially do something about that. Same with the whole bot scout thing that's been a problem for a long time, but now we've even been seeing like websites come out where just the public can use to just have this like map of like a large number of players that are in the wilderness and what they're up to. So like obviously that stuff is really, really bad, and also the cheating scandals that have happened in PvP tournaments. Like I'm not trying to deny that there aren't these issues, but I don't necessarily think that like we don't have options as players who don't participate in PvP to like avoid them.
Yeah, I think what it really comes down to is the fact that there is an Iron Man mode. There is just a fundamental player base that has no incentive, and everything is against them. Everything's
against
them.
My argument to that though is like just because it might be more difficult for an Iron Man to do wilderness content, like to me I see that as making the achievement even more valuable. Like imagine like a hardcore doing like all the wilderness CAs and like getting like all the drops over there. Like it makes it that much cooler, Like that's how I see it personally.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. The prestige is there, but my argument is about like the health of the wilderness. I mean, just the fact that these game modes exist causes super high levels of division and resentment toward wilderness and PKing in general, because you just have so much of the player base that is not having any fun out there.
Yeah,
I mean, there's some elements of fun. Like, don't get me wrong, like evading and again, I'm bringing up the most egregious examples. The Wilderness Slayer cave is completely imbalanced. I'm sorry, the exits need to lead to singles. You need to have an escape. Like you can't you can't just be caught in this fucking web of trails that there's no escaping. You just keep getting frozen every fucking 5 steps you take, and then it's just so fucking stupid. And there's some, and again, most of the singles areas are pretty great, especially if you bring some anti PK gear. You freeze your opponent. 1v1s are fine. Those are always pretty much fine because it's just like whatever. But yeah, it's just a kind of a fundamental issue with just how it's not worth your time trying to anti-PK. And if there was some sort of incentive for that, it'd bring more engagement out in the wilderness. I think it'd just be a lot more fun. Like, just imagine there was no such thing as Iron Man mode. Wilderness would be so much more fun because you just have everybody's on a level playing field. It's like, I don't know. It's just like it would just make more sense. Oh, by the way, I want to touch on hardcore main mode. You've probably heard my whole spiel on that, and the wilderness in that mode would be fucking insane.
I would like to discuss this. It's I don't know if I watched that full video that you posted about it, but I know it's been brought up a couple times on your videos. And like, I think the main problem that I have with it is that I feel like a lot of what makes hardcore difficult is the gear progression aspect of it, and it's having to grind out those bosses to obtain the gear, right? Like, I thought that's like the whole point of it. And to me, having hardcore main mode is just like being able to just skip that whole thing. It just kind of trivializes the whole thing, doesn't it?
Well, what do you mean skip it?
Just being able to trade, if you're a main, I'm assuming you could just trade max gear.
Okay, so I think this is actually a misconception. So
Okay.
my hardcore main mode idea, this is not my idea, by the way. This is something that
Okay.
T-Papa brought up to me. This is a separate server where everybody on this new server, it would be like Leagues Worlds, basically. It's like a separate server. It's the same game. There's no XP multipliers or any drop buffs or anything. Everyone starts in when the servers open up. Everyone starts out as level 3, and every single person is a hardcore main.
Okay.
So you're
That's,
not.
yeah, that's way different.
Yeah. You're not interacting with the real game. It's just like a completely separate thing. And if you die, you're kicked out of the server. And yes, you can trade, but ultimately every item in that server has been obtained by a hardcore.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'd actually be pretty cool. Like, that completely changes things for me. Just like, I just kind of read the title and I just assumed it's like, oh, people obviously just want like to just
A hardcore
easy...
that's a main, yeah, but you trade on the GE and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, that seemed kind of lame to me, but like, I like that idea. Like, the mega rares in that server would just, they'd be insane.
It would be so crazy.
I'm a little bit concerned though with potential swapping. I don't know. I'd imagine that would probably be against the rules. I'd imagine.
So
Yeah.
My concerns actually have nothing to do with swapping. I think swapping would be completely healthy. I think it would be totally fine. And I don't think there's any reason to try to ban against that or like have a ban against it. I think if you have a rich main and you want to transfer stuff over, guess what? T-Bows on this server are probably going to go for like fucking 20 bill in the main game. Like,
yeah, at least, yeah.
and if you want to, but this is the brutal part of the server. If you get a T-Bow or you get a scythe and you're using it and you die, it's gone. I mean, it's gone from the server. It's not even like it just gets shoved to the Grand Exchange for somebody else to get. It's like it's just gone.
I actually love that. Like, that was actually one of my biggest gripes about hardcore in the first place. Is I was like, why would anybody make a regular Iron Man at this point? Because you're literally not losing anything. Well, so, I mean, that was kind of why I made a hardcores in the first place. It's like, I just didn't have any reason to make a reg. So
the only reason I would suggest is that there is the subconscious not taking risks. So, for example, not using the Chaos Altar. So that's one of the things. Like, oh, I might as well keep my status for as long as possible. So I'm not going to abuse the Chaos Altar in the wilderness. I'm not going to do my wilderness clues. I'm not going to do the wilderness, agility that's really busted and stuff. Like, there's elements of hardcore that even though you're not actually losing anything if you die, you still are playing in this weird way subconsciously.
That's true. I mean, I've definitely made sacrifices. I won't lie. Like, I haven't played like I'm playing a reg, but I don't know. I couldn't justify just starting out not having the red helm.
Especially if you're like your goal is to kind of max. Like, it would be cool to max a hardcore. Like, why not?
Yeah. Although a lot of people will probably make comments about being a softcore, iron hardcore, or whatever that is. Like, I think a lot of people have the expectation that if you're playing a hardcore, you have to do PVM on it.
It's
which
that
I don't.
tightrope I was talking about. It's fucking
Yeah,
obnoxious.
I
You have
don't.
to appeal to everybody in this perfect balance where you're not too
Yeah,
reckless and you're not too
I
pussy.
don't like that, even though I'm probably gonna end up, doing that stuff in the future. But like I think it's just so annoying how like regular Iron Men are allowed to skill as much as they want and not do
No,
bosses. But if you play a hardcore, all of a sudden it's like you have to do bosses. Like it
I
doesn't make sense to
know.
me. Like
That is so. That is the reason I made this account Iron Man from the get go, so I could do my 91 fishing grind and have a good time and not have people like, "Oh, you're just trying to avoid PVM, pussy."
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
shut up, dude.
I know it's so annoying, especially coming from people who've just like never even played the game mode. They
Yeah,
probably wouldn't even get past like the first quest. But
yeah.
anyways, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, the only problem, going back to the hardcore main mode, and this is something that's actually a big problem, is the potential DDoSing. Because when you
Oh,
do have such a brutal, punishing game mode like this, where you're kicked out of the server and you've lost everything, DDoSing would 100% become a serious issue. And
yeah.
that I
So
don't even think that's preventable.
how would it work if you had Escape Crystal and the world went down? I'm just curious. Like,
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't. I'm trying to think how hardcore works. I think in hardcore, I think if you actually, yeah. How does that? Oh, well, okay. So if the escape crystal has a timer on it,
yeah.
it'll teleport you out. I think there's a few situations where like TOA, for example, if you're a normal hardcore, like you could just lose your status just because you logged out or something, or the whole world
Okay.
shut off and you just lose your status because of logging out and TOA kills you, which is the fucking most stupidest thing ever.
Should that be changed? Like I'm not familiar with
Well,
raids.
I don't know. I'm not the biggest I don't know all the systems in place. I just remember there being some issues with certain pieces of content where if you log out, you lose your status, TOA being one of them.
Okay.
Escape crystal. So if, let's just say, going to the DDoSing situation, if somebody DDoSed a world, I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to think. Like if you were in a TOA as a hardcore and somebody DDoSed the world, I'm pretty sure you just lose status immediately because the crystal doesn't even have time to register that you've logged out. It would only be like if your internet went down and your account is technically still logged in, then your crystal would proc and then it would send you out safely. But there's some, I don't fucking know how the systems work. It's something weird, but DDoSing in this hardcore main world would be devastating. It would be a very big issue that I don't even know could be resolved. So that's the one thing where I don't know if this world could ever actually work.
Yeah, I don't. That is a good point actually, and I know that they did change the death mechanics to directly combat
Exactly.
DDoSing.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, that is tricky. But like, I don't know if they could get the escape crystal to work though, if even if the worlds went down. It's like from my perspective, like I could be totally wrong on how it works, like technically, but like I imagine things still have to be happening in the game. Like the boss still has to kill you at some point, right? So like surely there must be time for the escape crystal to proc.
I'm
during that
not
time.
positive. You could be right. You could have a point to that, but I think there was something. And the only reason this is even coming to my mind is because when I was on Big Dogs, I think No Monkey was doing TOA, and all of a sudden his whole chat was like, "Whoa, this world just shut down. This world just shut down. Like the worlds are
Yeah.
shutting down." And he was saying that if No Monkey's world had shut down when he was mid TOA Kefri puzzle, where it's
Yeah.
relatively safe, he would actually just die, even with his teleport crystal on. Like
That's
he would
probably
just lose
true.
status.
But it sounds to me like it's kind of one of those edge cases, right?
Yeah,
There's
I
a
think that would
lot
be
of
an edge
content
case.
that's not like that.
I think you're right. I think most places besides TOA, besides maybe Coliseum as well, I think that might be another one. I think most of the times you'd end up being logged in and returned to safety somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, for the most part, you'd be good. But the problem would be, let's just say you have, I don't know, fucking know, like Foe and Bodhi are duoing a Toa on this hardcore main man mode, and they're streaming it. Everyone knows the world, and the DDoSer's like, we're gonna fucking DDoS you. Okay,
Yeah.
boom, world's gone, and they've just been not have they lost their status, their account is deleted. I mean, just how
Yeah.
devastating that would be,
it wouldn't even be a good look for the game either.
Oh,
Like
it'd be
people wouldn't want to
horrible.
play. Like the amount of backlash. Yeah, it could be a really bad situation. There'd have to be some sort of systems implemented
Yeah.
to prevent that.
Yep.
But yeah, I actually really like that idea. Like now that you've clarified what it's actually about,
Hmm.
like having separate servers completely changes it for me. And yeah, I'd actually be down for that. I think it sounds like a lot of fun. Like, would it be something like, did you have it like seasonal in mind, or would it just be like a permanent thing?
I'd
Just
I'd want it to be permanent. I think so. I
yeah,
talked to Mod Ash about it, and he loved the idea, and he was thinking, it'd probably be best first run as a seasonal just to see the player engagement,
yeah,
and then if it was really successful, they would just make it a permanent thing. And again, I don't. Not like he was saying this is going to be happening or anything, especially with Project Xander's coming out where you already kind of have those options. First of all, I would have no interest in an unofficial Project Xander's doing this kind of shit. It would need to be official.
yeah, yeah. I 100% agree. I think that to me, that's actually one of the main reasons why I'm not overall interested in Project Xanarus, and I don't really know if it's going to solve a lot of the problems that like I don't think it's going to solve the private server issue. I think it depends on how many tools they actually give developers, but it doesn't sound like we're going to have that much
Hmm.
um, like control over it, and I think that's going to be one of the main issues with it competing with private servers, which is the why I imagine it's being implemented in the first place. But I could be wrong.
Yeah. No, I think. Yeah. Um, okay. Darts. Is there anything else we want to touch on before we wrap things up? But definitely gone on a bunch of fucking topics. It's been great. Honestly, it's been nice
Yeah,
talking
no,
to you.
I've personally I've really enjoyed this conversation that we've had so far. I definitely didn't go in the direction that I thought it would. Like I thought I was just gonna be waffling about like skilling competitions for like half the time, and I thought I'd be struggling to come up with other topics. But I'm happy to leave it at that. I think we must be closing in on like almost 3 hours now at this
Yeah,
point,
we
anyways.
are,
So
which is wild, huh?
it's yeah, it's funny that you mentioned making it more concise or whatever. It's
I
just
know.
yeah, that's no, it's a good sign though. I'm happy. So yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on here. I think I've had a
Yeah,
blast.
my pleasure. Down in the description, is there any links you want provided for those listening?
Um,
I don't know if you have the YouTube, do you?
well, yeah, I've got like my socials. They're all up on my like temple page. I also have like a wiki user page too, where I have all my socials linked and stuff.
Okay, I'll
You could probably drop either one of those in the description. It's totally fine. Yeah.
pertinent. I'll go onto those pages and I'll just gather them all and shove them down in the description so people that want to connect or just see where you're at on your temple pages and stuff for those skillers out there, they can check you out.
Sure.
But yeah, honestly, this is great. This is the first in a while guest where I've never talked to you.
Yeah.
You're also not a quote unquote content creator, and
True.
this was just a great conversation. This is really natural flowing. I'm glad you could deal with my rants on some emotional topics for
Oh no,
me.
I love that stuff. I
Okay,
think
good.
it's good to bring it up. Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun, and who knows, maybe do this again sometime. Maybe we even pull on another skiller and we can have like a trio conversation or something, because you're very reasonable with your points, and I think honestly this is just a refreshing conversation to have, and I think even people listening might have considered this just like a kind of like a breath of fresh air. A lot of players, when they think of a high level skiller, might have an image in mind or just thinking they're very elitist or whatnot. And I think you were able to just be very grounded in your views and opinions, but you still have passion for the game, and it's just cool. So best of luck on your adventures, and best of luck on maxing your hardcore without dying.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And possibly maybe we could have I don't know, another one of the Solus boys in or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And
It's
yeah,
an idea.
in the future, that's definitely open. So thank you, Darts. And next week, everybody, we're gonna have 2 more casts. We are pretty loaded this month, and next month we're already filling up as well. So I also just want to quickly say to those that I have not responded to on Twitter and Discord, I will get to you guys eventually. There's just a lot of people to get to, and I don't want to start like reaching out to people and then several months later I finally get to them and they feel like I've ignored them. So it's just yeah, if you're one of those people that have reached out, I'll get to you eventually. But thank you, Darts, and we will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Thank you. Take care.